21. The saddest person in the world. If you've never seen the saddest person in the world, look at Bai Luan now. Ever since he sent the Heita space station blueprints to Heita and reignited her interest, every little trap he'd set for himself began to explode in sequence. First, Heita discovered that the delicious meals she'd been enjoying were cooked by Bai Luan. Then she found out he brewed excellent coffee. Next, she stumbled onto his 3 accounts. With each discovery, her curiosity about him climbed another notch. How could one person become more interesting the more she dug? As Heita's investigation continued, the delicate balance Bai Luan had been maintaining, appearing capable enough not to be dismissed, but not so capable that he'd be loaded with impossible tasks, started to crack. If this kept up, Heita would steadily raise her estimate of his potential. What would happen if one day she decided he was a genius on her level and casually assigned him monstrous projects? What if she truly believed he was brilliant? Bai Luan stayed up all night and hid every curio in his room. He couldn't let Heita find them. If she found out he could casually create curios too, he'd be doomed. One word from her, and he'd be working himself into the ground. He prayed she'd lose interest in him over time, and he could quietly slip away to the Astral Express. Then his phone vibrated twice. A bad premonition washed over him. Heita, I've finished reviewing the blueprints. There are still many areas to optimize, but for an ordinary person, this is quite good. It seems I might have underestimated you before. Location. Come here. I have new tasks for you. Another troublesome job? Bai Luan sighed and stared at the messages. For a moment, he seriously considered abandoning everything and running. But if he ran while Heita's interest in him was this high, he'd probably be caught and dragged back sooner or later. He'd need a long-term plan for boarding the Astral Express. For now, he had to be extra careful. I'm on my way, he replied. A short while later, he arrived at the meeting place. You're here? Bai Luan nodded. What do you want me for? Let me be clear. Everything I can do is pretty much in that blueprint. Anything beyond it is outside my scope. Heita smiled. It looks like my intuition was right. This achieves twice the result with half the effort. Bai Luan forced a weak smile. Don't worry, it's not a strenuous task. It's just to get you involved. All you need to do is show up daily and make sure they don't stray from the plan. So he was being made a supervisor. Easier than designing, a lot less brain work. But, Miss Heita, is it really appropriate for you to parachute me in like this? He asked. Your contribution is greater than all of theirs combined. What could they say? She replied. Bai Luan's mouth twitched. That would only make him a target. If everybody knew he was Heita's assistant, envy and resentment would bloom. People fought over illustrators and modelers. Space station construction teams were far more complex. Miss Heita, honestly, I put enough detail into that blueprint. He remembered Heita in the little black room had said if someone couldn't understand it, then they might as well smash a block of tofu over their heads. Even geniuses aside, the blueprint still had reference value. They already have the blueprint. Even if I'm not there, they should be able to finish the work, right? If I tell you to go, you go. My genius won't let you suffer, Heita said. I can go, but you need to give me an authoritative identity. I have to make sure I'm safe. All right, if anyone asks who you are, say you're my assistant. No one will dare question you then. Heita's assistant, that was indeed a powerful title. In that case, fine. Oh, by the way, what stage is the project at now? It hasn't started. Bai Luan went stone cold inside, so aside from the blueprint he'd provided, nothing else had been done. No funding, no construction team, no site selection, none of the messy groundwork had begun. A part of him exuded a strong urge to slack off. In his previous life, he would have run away the first day. But this time his boss was Heita, not some amateur, so he wasn't panicking. He was mainly depressed that he'd rushed to submit the blueprint only to earn renewed admiration that could lead to overtime and heavier responsibilities. Thinking about it like that made him feel very miserable. Still, Heita would find a way to handle it. He'd done what he could. At least he could expect a gold medal for assisting. If the project failed, it wouldn't be his head on the block. Miss Heita planning to discuss cooperation with the Interstellar Peace Company? He asked. That's right. Those guys have been bothering me for a long time. This is a good opportunity to get rid of them. They're willing to pay and have plenty of money. Bai Luan remembered how the company had tried to use the space station as a stepping stone to keep collaborating with Heita. Later, after the station was handed over to Asta, Heita had moved on, and the company had basically gotten a space station for free. That kind of operation required real ability. If you weren't one of the 84 geniuses in this universe, you shouldn't try to imitate it. He couldn't help the tiny smile that tugged at his lips. Misfortune of the powerful felt oddly comforting. Heita glanced at him. In the future, how will this play out? Everything will unfold exactly as you expect, Miss Heita, Bai Luan said. I can say with certainty, it's truly you, Miss Heita. You've been talking in circles forever, not a single useful word. You know, it's best to say little about fate. But there is one thing I can tell you. Things will go as you expect, and there will be some unexpected gains. He let a small, enigmatic smile fall. The unexpected gain, of course, referred to Asta. Even a genius like Heita wouldn't read the meaning behind his words yet. All right, stop showing off in front of me, she snapped. If you can't speak clearly, don't speak at all. Bai Luan shrugged and dropped the riddles. The project will officially start in a few days. Be ready to head to the construction site at any time. Do I have to go on a business trip? Can I apply to work remotely? The botanical garden needs me. Don't overestimate yourself. The botanical garden will be fine without you. I'll have my puppets take over your current duties. Just prepare for the business trip. So the trip was unavoidable. His 3-year routine was about to change. But it was temporary. Once the Heita space station launched into orbit, he hoped he could return to his old life. Oh, and make me a cup of tea before you leave, Heita added. Bai Luan glanced at the tea set beside her. Black tea this time? He picked up the pot and set to work, his movements practiced and graceful. In no time, he brewed a fragrant cup of black tea. He caught his reflection in the surface and wondered whether his previous routine would really come back afterward. He handed the cup to Heita and watched her take a sip. Probably, he thought. More than a year had passed in the blink of an eye, and suddenly it was the day the final module of the Heita space station was due to launch. Among the crowd watching, Bai Luan looked the calmest on the surface. Inside, he was anything but. As the countdown flickered on the screen, memories from the last year ran through his head. Heita had negotiated quickly with the company, everything settled in 2 days, and sent him here to supervise. There was a Heita puppet on site too, although most of the time it stayed idle. Its intelligence was a pale shadow compared to the Heita he knew in her little black room. Even among Heita puppets, there were differences. Bai Luan had taken up residence as Miss Heita's assistant. He discovered, a few months in, that he was the smartest person on the team. It had taken a few months to realize, because the first phase was all preparation. The site and the labs to build the space station were created from scratch. The company brought in top teams, the best equipment, and its finest transport crews. Money was no object. Everything demonstrated how much they valued this collaboration. Those early months were easy for him. His job was mostly confirming shipments and signing manifests on Heita's behalf. News that Heita was the collaborator made people swarm to the site, desperate to make contact. There was only one Heita puppet and one, admittedly cheap, assistant, but Heita's reputation elevated them both. People fawned over Bai Luan and tried to pry information out of him. Heita, who found all those visitors as irritating as flies, used him as a shield. He played the part willingly, chattered with the visitors, expanded his network a little, and even landed 1 or 2 collaborations. Using techniques he'd learned from Heita, Bai Luan traded for credits and sold the copyrights to a few games, signing revenue-sharing contracts. The money wasn't world-shattering, just enough to last him 7 or 8 lifetimes, but what surprised him was how valuable the technology he sold turned out to be. Once the news spread through the company, the offers multiplied. The tasks people asked for got harder, the prices went higher, and soon he was taking on deals so lucrative it was like watching a giant cup his hands to drink while mortals drowned in the spill. After a while, he began treating those supplicants like flies, too, less bluntly than Heita, but the effect was the same. When the facilities were ready, formal construction began. The company hired a professional crew from the Intelligentsia Guild, and an assortment of independent geniuses, drawn by Heita's name, showed up to help. Bai Luan asked Heita how to handle the followers. Her reply was brutally simple. You handle it. Keep them if they're useful, kick them out if they're not. At first, he didn't intend to wield his title as a lever. He'd hoped he could relax a little and let others do the work. But Bai Luan was the cleverest person on site, and he couldn't just sit back. Construction quickly turned into a nightmare. Engines misfired and exploded, components failed strength tests, and every few days a self-styled critic would declare the designs too idealistic to be feasible. Bai Luan spent his days and nights cleaning up the messes, finding workarounds for broken parts, building what they couldn't, and when the troublemakers complained, building a working prototype, slapping the test data in their faces, and telling them to leave. If you're useless, go practice. And if you're still here questioning me after I wrote the instructions in the blueprints, can't you read? Every recollection from that year tightened his chest. It felt like being forced to play a game with a room full of novices for over a year. They had improved, yes, but they were still hopelessly inexperienced. If that crew had wandered into Heita's home, they'd have been out the door by midday. Now, standing at the edge of the control platform, the fists clenched with the last coil of tension, Bai Luan watched the countdown numbers slide closer to 0. At the same moment, the Heita puppet beside him flickered to life. A stream of data ran across its optics, and its expression sharpened. The puppet tilted its head, its cold gaze skimmed Bai Luan's tense profile, paused, then swung to the live broadcast screen showing the launch pad. It seems I haven't missed the launch, it said. Bai Luan didn't need to turn to be certain. He knew Heita was seeing everything through the puppet's eyes. You arrived just in time, Miss Heita. Just woke up, the puppet replied. Now I woke at the right moment. They fell silent. The control platform seemed to hold its breath as the numbers ticked down in unison with the crowd's heartbeats. 3, 2, 1, launch! The button was pressed and the rocket carrying the final Heita module rose. The platform watched, riveted. Ascent, booster separation, orbital insertion, module separation, deployment, and finally docking. After an agonizing wait, the last module locked into place with the others in orbit. Heita Space Station. Complete, the control officer said, voice trembling with disbelief before it was drowned by a roar of euphoria. Somebody shouted, and the platform erupted. Cheers, tears, hugs, hats thrown into the air. Human joy spilled over in waves. Bai Luan stood at the edge of the celebration like an odd relic, eyes empty with fatigue. It was over. The marathon of more than 400 days had finally reached the finish line. He wanted to scream inwardly, I worked overtime for more than a year. Who understands that? Through the din, a clear, cool voice reached him. Well done. Bai Luan turned to the Heita puppet and let a relieved smile creep across his face. Thank you for the affirmation, Miss Heita. He took a long, deep breath, as if trying to expel an entire year of stale air, then let it go and, in a voice nearly a sigh, said, I can finally go home. Not yet, the puppet replied. You need to manage the Heita space station for me for a while. Bai Luan's expression fell. Shouldn't you do that yourself, Miss Heita? I'm not on Azure Star right now. You're the only one qualified for the job. I've been working for over a year, you know? Keep working then. You've endured over a year. What's wrong with enduring a bit longer? All right, just don't stretch it out forever. I really need to go back after this. Of course, I'll give you some time off. Sometime, he thought. There would be more work like this in the future, but at least there would be a break first. Miss Heita, if you're not on Azure Star, where are you? You've been busy, the puppet said with a faint pride. I, this genius, made a big commotion and you didn't even notice. Don't you see fate? Guess. Fate isn't something you can just spot everywhere. You guessed right the first time. She answered his earlier guess before he finished. I'm doing a show. To promote the Genius Society? To announce to the world that you're a genius? You guessed right again, Bai Luan smiled. You really should show yourself more often. It's a pity not to let the entire universe admire a genius like Miss Heita. Heh, the puppet responded, and that brief sound had a little softness to it. I like to hear that. Can you really grasp it? Can you really grasp it? Bai Luan leaned against the window of Herta space station and watched the azure star slide past. The further he floated from home, the more he wondered if this was really the childhood dream he'd chased after seeing those old astronaut ads. He let out a bittersweet smile. Herta was away shooting a show, so he was in charge of the station. No one objected. After all, he'd been carrying those rookie scientists for over a year, and Herta had more or less installed him as acting station master. But he didn't cling to the title. It was only temporary. When Herta returned in a few days, he'd hand it back. That was why he'd become an annoyingly relaxed interim head, which left the researchers who'd worked under him for a year whispering that Assistant Bai had changed. When he heard the rumors, he could only shrug. Had he bullied them before with a terrible temper? He didn't remember being fierce, only desperate to get off work. And if you asked those kids to build an engine, it was either wind or rain. What he could finish in 2 weeks, they couldn't finish as a team in half a year. Who wouldn't get hot-headed? If he had to rank the team, MVP was definitely Herta. Whether she was in the little black room or peering through a puppet to inspect the real world, she'd helped him a lot. The gold medal for assistance, however, belonged to the company. Looking at the credit pointers on shipping manifests had numbed him to how much the station had swallowed. As for the rest, they were middling, anywhere from 3.0 to 6.5. 2 people stood out, Tony Stark and Kurt Conrad. Their names alone made Bai Luan smile. One Iron Man, one Lizard Man. Another reminder that the Honkai Star Rail world loved its Easter eggs. He'd score them around an 8, quick to pick things up after one lesson, only tripping on the hard problems. Malleable talents. The fact that they could survive 3 days in Herta's home before getting the boot was already impressive. Herta's home was the hardest dungeon, and even with the formidable tool Little Herta, it had taken him 3 years to navigate it like a dragon, though he'd only just started to get the hang of it when Herta called him here. A little more goofing off as acting station master, and he could go home. Victory felt close, but reality was less glamorous. The station had just been completed. Everything smelled of fresh metal and paint, brand new but empty. Every compartment needed people before the station could really live. So Bai Luan's first real task was vetting the researchers who wanted to join Herta space station. He'd already vetted the old rookies who'd followed him for over a year. After that span, their backgrounds and capabilities were known and acceptable, so they were allowed to stay. The company had announced the station the day it was finished, advertising jointly exploring the mysteries of the stars, and that slogan had drawn scores of admirers of Herta. Those geniuses who rushed in from all over had to be interviewed before being hired, and the job of deciding their fate fell to Bai Luan. His assessment was simple. First, check their background. They had to be at least recognized as geniuses where they came from. After confirming academic credentials, test practical ability, an internship period to see if they could adapt to life at Herta space station. Because staff were scarce, he didn't make the tests brutal. After a brief trial, most were brought in as interns. These people weren't here for pay. They wanted to work for Herta's ideal. It was hard to justify turning them away unless they caused trouble. Once there were enough recruits to keep the station running, hiring stopped. After the immediate tasks, Bai Luan supervised the newcomers for a month to get them familiar with station operations, then gave himself a vacation. Rumor among the researchers claimed he was like a ghost, appearing at random. Thanks to the instincts of his past life, the whole plan had gone smoothly, at least at first. Then boredom turned into something worse, a creeping nihilism. The station, as it turned out, had essentially been built to store Herta's collection of strange objects, things she had nowhere else to put. Everyone on the station felt incidental. The original planning hadn't given them a real purpose. That needed fixing fast. Lately, many researchers had come to him, saying they'd sacrificed too much for a life of ideals to be stuck doing mundane chores. They demanded work worthy of their dedication. A few sharp-tongued ones called this Bai Luan's dereliction of duty. If Herta were here, she'd probably be chewing them out. Bai Luan, however, was patient. He listened, promised to arrange projects that matched their ambitions, and quietly wrote their names down. He'd handled this type before, The new recruits were just like the rookies he'd tormented a year ago. They complained and acted self-sacrificing, forgetting that the tasks before them were the easiest they'd see for years. So far, he'd only taught them to operate the station. The station's true purpose, cataloging and containing those troublesome, strange objects, hadn't even begun. It was time to start. Bai Luan opened the list Heita had sent and casually selected 40-odd items. Then he posted them in the station work group chat. All researchers form teams freely and choose any strange object from the attachment. Based on its properties, submit a complete containment plan within 30 standard days. Bai Luan, plans approved by me will be considered valid. Official employees whose plans are approved may present their ideals. I will consider giving them a chance to try. Interns whose plans are approved will be promoted to official employees immediately. Those who continue to perform excellently after promotion will receive the same consideration described above. Bai Luan, for those who fail to submit on time or whose plans are rejected 3 times in a row, official employees will be demoted to interns with salary adjustments accordingly. Interns will be dismissed from the space station. Gentlemen, good luck. The next day, the station's atmosphere changed palpably. Pressure and energy mixed in the air. Everyone treated his message as an opportunity. Footsteps hurried in the corridors, labs burned bright at odd hours, and the sound of heated debates, page turning, and instrument adjustments wove together into a surprisingly lively racket. No one expected to be fired. Bai Luan watched the bustle and smiled. By his reckoning, no more than 15 plans would ultimately pass. The opportunity had been given. Now, could they really seize it? At first, everyone treated the assignment like any other mission. After 2 weeks, not a single proposal had survived Bai Luan's review. They couldn't accuse him of being deliberately difficult. His rejections were almost always a single curt sentence, but that was enough to shut them down. They would send revised drafts and get silenced again. Both the proposals and his brief rejections were public. Everyone could read them. Half a month of rewrites later, no team had cleared the bar. The mood at Heita Space Station shifted from eager competition to a pressure so intense it hurt. Nobody was daydreaming about realizing lofty ideals anymore. They were praying their proposals would simply pass. Bai Luan, however, remained unruffled. He wasn't being unreasonably harsh. There really were problems. Containing curios the way the teams proposed would create issues sooner or later. Curios are not ordinary artifacts. Many of these researchers had probably never even seen one. Inexperience plus arrogance was a bad mix, and he had expected exactly this outcome. From his assessments, only 2 teams looked like they might eventually clear his review, Stark's and Conrad's. Curiously, neither had submitted anything until now. He shrugged mentally. If no one passed in the end, it wouldn't be his problem. The point of the exercise, as far as he was concerned, was to give the researchers a wake-up slap, to knock them out of the "I'm a genius" fantasy and make them face reality. The process was already doing its work. Without him searching for projects to crucify, the teams had demonstrated how poorly they were prepared for real difficult work. No wonder Heita had lost enthusiasm for the station after launch. A lot of the people here weren't worth keeping around. Then his phone buzzed. 2 new submissions had arrived. He opened the group chat and saw Stark and Conrad had sent their proposals one after the other. A faint smile tugged at his lips. He opened the files and scanned methodically. Budget was sound, risk assessment solid, feasibility plausible. After a careful read, he could find no fault. Finally, fallback plans. After a month of grading weak papers, he'd got submissions that actually passed. It looked like these teams had been polishing their work for weeks. Stark's and Conrad's groups were composed of seasoned hands, old rookies who'd been around long enough to know better. They had arrived just in time. Bai Luan posted in the chat, Stark's team and Conrad's team proposals have passed and are tied for first. The announcement sent the station into a flurry. People began flocking to the 2 teams for advice, exactly what Bai Luan wanted. First, you realize you're a mess, then you swallow your pride and ask how to get better. Threaten people with losing their jobs and their potential for learning skyrockets. Better yet, the old hands could tutor the newcomers. and Bai Luan wouldn't have to micromanage. It solved accusations of neglect, forced researchers to confront themselves, and shifted the burden of training onto those veterans. He was winning on multiple fronts. A week before the deadline, 3 more teams managed to get approvals. Each day, the atmosphere grew heavier. Those who'd chosen the hardest curios for their projects were the worst off. Switching targets or gritting their teeth and continuing both felt like bad choices. They were stuck in a miserable limbo, showing up to work with masks of suffering every day. Bai Luan enjoyed walking the corridors to observe the human purgatory he'd orchestrated. Even the newcomers now looked at him with a little awe and a little fear. This casual acting station master really could be as strict as the old-timers had warned. 7 days later, the month closed. 13 proposals had passed. The documents covered over 40 curios, but together they would contain less than half. With that level of performance, the speeches about coming to Heita space station to devote themselves to science sounded laughable. Still, Bai Luan had a temper but not a grudge. His threat of mass dismissal had mostly been a scare tactic. He'd worked hard to get the station running. He wasn't about to really fire everyone. He posted a public self-criticism in the group. As of the deadline, a total of 13 proposals have passed the review, far below expectations. The objective for this project was set hastily by me, without considering Heita Space Station's actual situation. This is my dereliction of duty as station master. I will upload a self-assessment report shortly. Regarding the dismissal penalty, since this situation was caused by my negligence, the penalty is cancelled. Rewards remain unchanged. I alone will take responsibility. My sincere apologies to all colleagues at Heita Space Station. On the surface, it was a mea culpa. In practice, it was another prod. Those idealists who'd preached about their ambitions before the project would see themselves exposed. If anyone took the apology at face value, Bai Luan wished them well. They were in for a long haul at this station. The next day, a resignation letter arrived on his desk. He glanced at the signature, didn't read the contents, and tossed it into the bin. He crossed the name off his internal list. Over the following days, more resignation letters came, and he crossed off more names. He didn't bother reading the letters. He didn't care who left feeling disheartened, resentful, or relieved. People who couldn't take this pressure wouldn't last at Heita Space Station anyway. Better for them to leave early. The exodus lasted about 4 days. When it ended, only a small fraction of people remained, those who had withstood the humiliation and stayed on. They had passed the first test, endurance. Bai Luan congratulated them privately. They had taken the first step toward becoming the kind of old rookies who could actually carry the station forward. Now, the harder part began. He had to find a way to make them improve. Goodbye. Bai Luan had been training the staff. There was no other way to describe it. If this space station hadn't passed through his hands, then no matter how poorly the recruits performed, it would not have been his problem. But since it did, their performance reflected on him, and he could not afford to be disliked by Heita before boarding the Astral Express and becoming a nameless. He had to push this group up to the passing line. At the very least, they needed to reach the competence of an experienced rookie. It wasn't difficult, just required effort. With 13 teams now in place, Heita's curios could gradually be transferred here. They would start with the 13 curios that already had solutions and then bring over the extras from Miss Heita's residence. He also planned to sneak in a few he had made himself, 2 at a time, every transfer. If he did this enough, he could quietly move the pile of curios he had created out of boredom onto the Heita space station without Heita noticing. He didn't know how long he'd be able to keep doing it, but he would send as many of these little time bombs as he could. With each one sent, his risk of exposure diminished by a fraction. After a few days spent arranging schedules and routines, his period of so-called self-reflection was drawing to a close. Those planning to leave had resigned. His objectives were met, and it was time for the next phase. First, reward the outstanding. Now that he had financial freedom, funding 2 staff-favored projects was feasible and not costly. More importantly, after jolting these people awake, he couldn't keep squeezing them. Bai Luan hated an atmosphere of perpetual pressure. Some rewards would ease the tension. As soon as he announced the incentives, Stark and Conrad came to him with their proposals. Both picked mechanical prosthetics as their core research, though each intended to focus on different aspects. They loved to compete. As Bai Luan could pick them out in a crowd, they could sense a similar caliber in one another and unconsciously treated each other as rivals. To put it simply, stand users attract each other. Bai Luan was pleased. Internal competition among subordinates always benefited the leader. One stick to force them to face reality, one carrot to give them something to look forward to. That balance kept the station's atmosphere measured, neither crushing nor arrogant. He also normalized curio containment. No strict time limits, but a condition for dismissal. Anyone who failed to participate in a qualified solution for 6 months could be let go. The reward for continuing participation was priority in curio research. He gave everyone half a month to adapt. Once they had mostly adjusted, he put curio classification on the agenda. In about 2 months, Bai Luan had gotten the Heita space station moving in the right direction. Everyone had only been on the job for 2 months, but it felt like years, each day with clear goals and schedules. Confused? Unsure what to do? Feeling your work is meaningless? You're just too idle. 2 days of overtime would set you straight. When the station had stabilized, Bai Luan finally posed the real challenge to the entire staff: how to contain the Stellaron. He would not be privy to their project proposals. In the station master's office, he glanced at his phone, confirmed the message was genuine, and set it on the desk. Heita had messaged. She was done with whatever had kept her away and was returning to take over the space station. Bai Luan looked over the thick stack of documents under the phone and felt a twinge of regret. He had been in the middle of dividing departments and hadn't finished, but passing that work on to others wasn't necessarily bad. He opened the Heita Space Station group chat and announced his decision. Everyone, starting today, I resign as acting station master of the Heita Space Station. Stark. Don't go. My research funds. My big patron. Bai Luan Station Master, is something wrong? I can try to help you. Stark, +1. They were the most active members in the group chat. Bai Luan answered calmly. Nothing. Miss Heita has finished her work and is coming back to take over. I'm off duty. The chat lit up. The sudden liveliness came partly because people feared him less now that he was stepping down, and partly because many had come for Heita. Her return was exciting. Bai Luan watched the chatter with a small sense of pleasure. He knew their expectations for Heita would soon be tempered by reality, but after 2 months of tempering, this group would not collapse at the first touch like they had at the start. Bai Luan, Station Master, where will you go after stepping down? Conrad, same question. I have other work. I won't be staying on the station. Silence filled the chat for a moment. He chuckled softly at the screen. These pretentious little rascals have probably popped champagne behind my back, he thought, and then typed one last request. Bai Luan, we work together. No matter how long or short, there will always be a farewell. Each of you send me off with this phrase. Oh, Station Master, my Station Master. He had a private reason. The line was a farewell from a student to a teacher in the movie Dead Poets Society from his previous life. Having them say it gave him a small way to relive that memory. Did that make him their teacher? Whether he was or not, he decided to be for the moment. Does that phrase have any special meaning? Before Conrad could weigh in, he was outpaced. At Stark, you're so unromantic. At this moment, why ask so many questions? Just say, Stark beat him to it. Oh, Station Master, my Station Master. Almost at once, Conrad sent the same. Oh, Station Master, my Station Master. Conrad, sitting in his lab, smiled at Stark's message. I didn't think you had any sentimentality left, he said. Stark, in another room, pouted. I'm not dumber than you. The group chat flooded with that single line, over and over. Bai Luan watched the wall of repeating words and felt a quiet warmth. He nodded. No more words necessary. The farewell was ample. He packed lightly and walked to the platform where a ship had been sent to fetch him. The platform was empty and hushed, cold indicator lights blinking a steady rhythm. He hadn't told the staff he was leaving. No one had come to see him off. He wondered how long it would take them to notice. Before he boarded, he looked back at the station one last time. True goodbyes are silent, he thought, and performed a theatrical, deliberate curtain call to the empty void. There was no applause, no witness, but a contented smile eased across his face, as if he had shed some burden. He lifted his luggage, turned, and stepped into the ship's dim hatch. The engine thrummed low and constant. A thin, ethereal blue tail flame unfurled into the vacuum as the vessel drifted away from the platform and slipped into the abyss of stars. A light, almost otherworldly voice seemed to cut through the silence and linger over the receding station. Goodbye? 26. Pray that the boss forgets about himself. The spaceship's engine hummed, then gradually fell silent. Bai Luan stepped out of the cabin carrying a light bag, spread his arms, and took a deep breath. The long mist air filled his lungs and a contented smile spread across his face. I'm back. Knowing the place well, he didn't need anyone to guide him. He walked home with a light step and opened his door. The room was exactly as he'd left it. He tossed his luggage aside and dove onto the bed, rolling around happily and undoing the neat sheets he had arranged before leaving. He lay there for a while, indulging in laziness, no need to tidy up immediately. After a short spell of bliss, Bai Luan sat up humming and began unpacking. He hadn't brought much from the space station, only a few photos and everyday necessities, so it didn't take long. Once his room was in order, he planned to visit old friends. He had been away a long time. He had to reconnect. The first stop had to be at the material distribution station. The distribution robot was processing materials for Ms. Heita's home, dutifully completing its daily allocations. For over a year, though, one daily task on its list had remained unfinished. Greet the self-disciplined guy, incomplete. Bai Luan had spent years running past that station every morning, shouting morning out of habit. The robot, practical and literal-minded, had added the greeting to its to-do list. For 2 years, things had been steady, until Bai Luan came by more than a year ago to say goodbye. He told the robot he wouldn't be around for a while, but that he'd continue his self-discipline elsewhere. The robot logged the farewell and went on with its routines. After that, every morning it watched the direction Bai Luan used to run from, but the familiar figure never reappeared. After all, it was just a material distribution robot. It didn't have feelings. Still, it kept glancing that way. The behavioral logic module couldn't explain why it did so. The task log had been appended with a year's worth of entries. Each day ended with the same incomplete item. An item left incomplete for so long should have been deleted, but it hadn't. The robot continued to perform its duties, then look, without particular reason, in the direction of the empty path. Then, one morning, a figure came running from that way, waving just like he had for the last 3 years. Hey, long time no see. The robot's to-do item flipped from red, incomplete, to blue, complete. It raised its mechanical arm and returned the greeting in its clipped, polite way. Long time no see. The botanical garden had been cared for whether Bai Luan was there or not. The plants were healthy under routine maintenance. The Heita puppet that had been placed to cover for him did the usual tasks, watering, trimming, nothing more. It didn't give the garden the extra emotional attention that Bai Luan had. The most obvious change was the inspiration shroom's behavior. Once lively and unpredictable under Bai Luan's influence, it had fallen into long periods of quiet. Its normal routine, sunbathe and grow, had resumed, and the odd little performances it once offered were rare. Still, every so often, the inspiration shroom would make a random, abstract sound, adding a splash of oddity to the quiet garden. The plants cared for by the puppet were technically flourishing, but lacked a certain spark. Chihiro flitted through the greenery, slipping between rose bushes and jack-o'-lantern plants, then landed on the inspiration shroom's cap with a soft flutter. "You're back, Mushroom," Chihiro said, and the shroom gave a polite nod. They both soaked in the warm sunlight until the human who had been disinfected on arrival stepped into the garden and cast a shadow over them. Chihiro ruffled, then circled the newcomer with agitated wings. "You're blocking the mushroom's sun," it scolded. "If you block it too long, the mushroom might die, Mushroom." Bai Luan stepped aside and crouched down, grinning at the little fungus. "Can you do that thing again?" "The song?" "Of course, Mushroom." The inspiration shroom cleared its throat and sang the quirky tune Bai Luan had been waiting to hear for over a year. Inspiration Guli Guli Watcha. Inspiration Shroom. That's it. I'm back. Everything's back. Where did you go, Mushroom? To work. I don't know how long I'll stay this time, but I'm back for now. We'll talk about my matters later. He smiled at the nearby roses. The rose bushes had watched Bai Luan go and had watched the puppet take over. When they saw him now, their leaves rustled like a street of fans spotting a celebrity. Unable to clap, they used roots and stems, swaying like dancing seaweed in greeting. Maybe I'll shoot a video later. My accounts haven't been updated in ages. Our gardener is back, Bai Luan said to them. The roses blushed in a bloom of color. First a shocked yellow, then a friendly blue, then opened fully, as if their buds had been waiting for his return. They have a lot to say, so keep me company while I chat, he told the inspiration shroom. Of course, Mushroom. Bai Luan dug out a small shovel, scooped some soil, lifted the inspiration shroom, and carried it over to the roses. The whole botanical garden seemed to pulse with renewed life, as if the plants were welcoming him home. After a busy, relaxing day, Bai Luan returned to his little room, feeling content. Compared to the space station, he preferred this place. Both served Heita, but here felt like living while the station was all business. He had earned enough on his trip. If he never had to go again, so much the better. Given what he'd accomplished, though, that seemed unlikely, unless Heita forgot about him. Maybe she would forget. He thought, absurdly, of praying that his boss would forget him. In the little black room, Bai Luan added a few items to his botanical garden notebook for the first time in a long while. Heita glanced around the room and remarked, "It seems you're home." Yes, Miss Heita is finally done and has returned to take over Heita's space station. I hope her interest lasts a little longer this time. If you ask me, that's unlikely. Heita crossed her arms, frowning in amused disdain. I've been observing that space station for a long time. It's barely adequate as a toy. It won't last. Before long, I'll just discard it as an infinitely capacious containment box. Bai Luan grinned, a little smug. Not necessarily. I left a project there that you'll definitely be interested in. Oh? Heita's mouth curved, a smile that said, "You dare to say that?" "What did you leave?" she pressed. "To seal anomalies in the starry sky. That was the original purpose of establishing Heita's space station. Do you think the Stellaron counts as an anomaly?" "Containing Stellarons, huh? Well, this genius is indeed interested in such things." Bai Luan's chest puffed. "See?" Heita's smile grew sharper. "How long do you think this will keep me occupied?" Bai Luan stroked his chin, thinking aloud. "Since there isn't an actual Stellaron for experiments, it's like a blind man feeling an elephant. I'd say at least half a month. 7 days at most, then I'll come looking for you." 7 days? Bai Luan's heart sank. He had hoped for much longer. "Looking for me? But I've only just rested a few days. This genius loves solving problems. If someone can repeatedly present me with problems I find interesting, I will naturally come knocking. Can't Heita's space station keep your attention a little longer?" No one said I can only focus on one thing for 7 days. Bai Luan felt his composure slip away. After more than a year of non-stop work, he had dreamed of a proper break. Now he realized his vacation might be over in a week. Damn it, Miss Heita was still after him. 27. Work hard, to be able to lie flat. Bai Luan laughed, a little helpless. A faint, corporate drone aura clung to him like a barely alive heartbeat. Just as Heita had said in the little black room, she really had spent 7 days solving the problem of containing the Stellaron. Then she left some Heita puppets to run the Heita space station and came here to knock on his door. Most people avoided difficult problems like the plague, but Heita, this genius, loved them. She didn't have many hobbies. She loved solving little problems. A genius problem solver, through and through. "Do you have any other good ideas? Tell me, quick." "Miss Heita, I've already told you, I don't want to interfere too much with your destiny. I'm not asking for specifics. Just point me in a direction." Heita folded her arms, dismissive. "Don't think I can't guess why you left a Stellaron containment project at the Heita space station." I said, cut the act." She interrupted, a cold, knowing smile at the corner of her mouth. "I'm not asking you to spoil the script of fate, only to give me a direction." She stepped forward, an invisible pressure washed over him like a cold tide. "Since you opened this door, do you think your destiny cannot be spoken excuse still works on me?" Pushed into a corner, Bai Luan shrank back with a sheepish grin. Geniuses were not easy to handle. It wasn't hard to invent a problem, but inventing one Heita would find interesting was another matter. She'd beaten time itself. What could possibly stump her? He had a headache. Everything was as Heita had predicted. The only person who truly understood Heita was Heita. Heita's personality? Heita puppet? A Heita puppet with Heita's personality? A sudden idea flashed through Bai Luan's mind. "Miss Heita," he said, taking a breath, trying to sound probing and desperate at once. "Perhaps we could introduce some variables into the core code that manufactures the Heita puppets?" Heita's eyebrows rose. The sharp, inquisitive light in her eyes changed at once to bright interest. She didn't say anything, just inclined her head as if to say, "Continue." "You're flawless, that's beyond doubt," Bai Luan went on, composing himself. "But precisely because of that, you could use it as a baseline to inject controllable, non-destructive, random parameters into your perfect clones. Let each activated puppet have subtle, unpredictable shifts in core personality." He paused to gauge her reaction. Seeing none, he pressed on, offering the real bait. "Then you could see and hear firsthand how Heita would think and act under different possibilities. You could ask these selves under different variables, 'What should I do next?' The answers would be very interesting." He watched Heita carefully. In his previous life, Heita had done something similar in a character PV released by MiHoYo, but here, after his arrival in this world, he couldn't be sure whether things still followed the old script. What if she found it boring? What if it really is more interesting here? Heita said, silent amusement in her tone. It was right to come back from the Heita space station early, truly worthy of this genius. Yes, Miss Heita, unparalleled in the world, Bai Luan echoed, breathing a small sigh of relief. He'd cleared the hurdle. Since Heita was intrigued, she'd be occupied for the foreseeable future. Excellent. He had successfully diverted her attention. "Oh, right. One more thing." "There's more?" Bai Luan's relief leapt back up. Please don't ask for more ideas, he thought. He wasn't a constant fountain of inspiration. Nothing major. That's good. How did you create that pile of oddities? Cough, cough, cough! Heita's single sentence caught him off guard, and he choked on his coffee, looking at her with wide eyes. You traced it back to me? His face asked without words. You didn't think you could hide it from me, did you? Check here. Check there. Easy to trace back. Heita's tone was almost amused. Bai Luan had no good answer. He couldn't tell her the truth, that it was a system ability, that a paper crane folded by him could become a living thing. He couldn't explain the system in scientific terms. It was like that ordinary umbrella that acted like a parachute. Structurally and visually, it was an ordinary umbrella. But if you jumped from a great height and opened it mid-fall, it would cushion the descent like a cartoon. The system's power didn't obey physical laws. How do you explain that? He shrugged and said the easiest thing. Would you believe me if I said I made them casually? Heita blinked. As expected. Bai Luan stared. How could she accept that? How could a genius believe such an absurd explanation? A bad premonition surged through him. He opened his mouth to fix it, but Heita only said lightly, I truly underestimated you before. You are indeed a genius. Nu. It was over. His offhand, self-deprecating line had become proof. In Heita's eyes, a genius could invent oddities casually, and Bai Luan's oddities fit the bill. Strange appearances, apparently casual purpose, and deep principles under closer inspection. His flippant remark now sealed his reputation. A bitter smile formed. Miss Heita, actually, I have a system, and all my oddities are given by it, he admitted. Heita looked at him and simply said, Heh! She clearly didn't believe him. Damn it, what kind of world was this where no one believed the truth? After failing to correct her impression, Bai Luan gave up. The more you plot, the more you lose. He'd read that somewhere, and it felt true now. Resigned, he accepted that Heita now considered him a genius. He had only been pretending to be one to stay under the radar, to avoid any major catastrophes buried in the Honkai Star Rail world's background text, and to lie low until he could board the Astral Express. Then he would meet Stelly or Kalis, follow the main characters, and as long as he didn't flirt with death, he'd be fine. But now he'd played the role too well. Heita's impression of him had shifted from a vague, transparent genius to a genius with status. If she began to regard him as a peer in the genius society, What then? How much work would she dump on him? Writing base code for simulated universes? Developing DLC? Forcibly recruiting him as an assistant in her mad experiments? No, 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 no. That could not happen. Bai Luan forced himself to think of a plan. He would have to make Heita understand, over time, that while he might be occasionally brilliant, he was not the kind of unstoppable genius she was. He would become Schrodinger's genius, forever, in a superposition of has a little something but not much, and occasionally brilliant but lacking follow-through. It would be a long defensive campaign for the future of his lie-flat career. And the enemy was Heita, the cosmic-level genius. In the cold despair, a stubborn corporate drone spark flared in his eyes. His goal remained the same: work hard so he could lie flat. Humans had a lot of tricks up their sleeves. You can't try to kill Heita with poison, right? Since Heita came back, things had been mostly peaceful, except for one extra item in my daily routine: dealing with Heita's food and drink. Everyone knew that because I'm a curio forger, anything edible I make tends to carry curio effects. That leads to two outcomes when I cook. If I mess up, the dish can be lethally poisonous. If I get it right, it's god-tier delicious. After I realized how much trouble the negative curios caused when my cooking went wrong, I locked myself in the little black room to study. I even developed a special trick. I can make a meal look, smell, and seem perfectly delicious, but with the taste slightly off, so the diner only notices something's wrong the moment they take a bite, and then, on closer inspection, it detonates. Handy for assassination if you were the type to waste ingredients. I'm not. I like good ingredients too much to blow them up on purpose, so I never use that technique. And besides, I don't have any enemies. I'm not trying to poison Heita. Still, the idea is an amusing dark corner to imagine. There's a brighter side. The perfect meals I can make aren't addictive in the usual sense. No tolerance, no withdrawal, but they're so good you miss them badly when they're gone. If you keep a balanced diet and control portion sizes, they're actually healthy. Go overboard, and your stomach will rule your mind, and you'll become a walking stomach demon. To paraphrase a saying that fits too well, why did you let me taste such perfect char-siu rice? What will I do if I can never eat it again? A certain smart refrigerator made the secret a problem of the past. Because the fridge preserves things impeccably, and the Heita in the little black room taught me her favorite tastes, I batch cook Heita's preferred dishes, freeze them, and the Heita puppets handle delivery. So her meals have not been an issue lately. Those days have been quiet. Heita occupies herself with things that interest her, and I take advantage of the calm. Each peaceful day is one more day gained. I don't expect 3 uninterrupted years of bliss anymore. My mindset is more one day at a time. I'm still chasing that elusive degree of genius, though. It's proving difficult. I envy some of the researchers on Heita space station who hit that level naturally. If they knew I thought that, they'd probably scream, "Kill the Emperor of Versailles," and rush at me with pitchforks. Low scorers are failures, high scorers are top students, but the ones who can control their scores, those are the true masters. My phone vibrated twice and I twitched in reflex, then relaxed when I saw what it was. Heita was coming to find me again. Did this problem stretch on for more than a month? That was already pretty good. I opened the message, half expecting a new task, and got a spam ad, false alarm. I tapped it and for no reason, typed 2 letters back, TD. Satisfied with my little mischief, I smiled. Another idle, pleasant day. Then another message came through from Heita. Location, come. Combo attacks now? Heita plus spam, really? I'd let myself get happy for nothing. Still I went. Following the coordinates led me to a huge open area filled with Heita puppets. So many versions. Different hairstyles, art styles, uniforms, personalities. There was even a Lego Heita and a Minecraft Heita. Copyright infringement aside, it looked like a multiversal Heita convention. Even among all these copies, Heita herself was impossible to miss. She sat in the center on a throne, a vacuum field humming about her, evidence the experiment had succeeded. I could pick her out immediately. Walking closer, I let my gaze roam over the crowd. The bratty Heita was pouting at a cold Heita. The athletic Heita was stretching. The tomboyish one lounged on an instrument. Then, from somewhere in the throng, a voice like a fired fuse barked. "What are you looking at? Come out and fight!" There's always one who wants to be difficult. I backed away, hands up, not wanting to provoke a brawl. Even with so many variations around, none of them quite matched the Herta in my little black room. That Herta had started as a perfect copy of a real-life puppet, but she'd changed. The little black room version had become something unique. If I had to describe her now, I found Herta on her throne. "You're here?" she asked. "Yes." "This project is boring, this genius," she said, chin propped on one hand, eyes on me. "You know why I called you, don't you?" "No. Are you enjoying being cheeky?" "Just joking, trying to lighten the mood. Not funny." She leaned forward, hands on her hips. "Tell me, what new ideas do you have?" "Miss Herta, to be honest, I'm out of ideas. As the saying goes, a masterpiece is born by chance." "Oh?" She raised an eyebrow. "You're saying there's nothing left?" "Exactly. Soon I'll be chewing on a lighter for your entertainment." "A masterpiece born by chance. Well said. But that alone doesn't make me believe you've run out." "You can't make me produce it. If you refuse, this genius will take it. If this genius knew all the futures you've seen, it would be a mess, wouldn't it?" Her smile turned decisive. "So choose, tell me yourself, and I won't interfere with your destiny can't be spoiled rule, or I take it, and then I know everything." The threat was empty when it came to memories. My system protected them, but getting at them would still be a puzzle for her. Better to give her a simpler suggestion than let her poke at me directly. "You've caught erudition's attention," I said, testing the idea. "He glanced at you, didn't he? Tell me something I don't know. Don't you want to see him again? Only this time, you make the move." Herta considered that, then broke into a pleased smile. "Interesting. It wasn't a mistake to bring you in after all. So then I'll take my leave." "Go. Oh, by the way, you need to go to Herta Space Station." "To the space station? What about it?" "The researchers are split into two factions and arguing. Go mediate." "Isn't that your job?" "The heads of the two sides are Stark and Conrad. My approach would be to fire them both. Do you want that?" I fell silent. I knew those two, guys I'd trained, the ones I'd invested a bit of myself in. I hadn't expected Herta to spare them. "I didn't expect you to show me any leniency." "Of course, you're important." She was already lost in thoughts about meeting erudition. The next stretch wouldn't be boring. More important than the whole space station. I gave a rueful, bitter smile. "I'm honored." Then I turned and left. Bai Luan opened his phone and tapped the group chat, notifications off. 99 plus unread messages flooded the screen. So many messages, so much to read. He scrolled back to the day he left, then forward again, hunting for how the two senior rookies he'd brought along had started a fight. As the stream of messages flicked by, the situation at Herta Space Station came into focus. The uproar had begun with a split between Stark and Conrad. Both had chosen mechanical prosthetics as their research focus, and, predictably, their teams had become competitive. About a month ago, their disagreement exploded. Stark argued that with sentient mechanical life forms already in existence, there was no need to limit the percentage of prosthetics in a human body. Conrad insisted the opposite. Being human came from flesh and blood, and prosthetics were meant to supplement, not replace, what was living. Once each voiced a principle, the dispute intensified. Stark said the human body had too many flaws. Conrad shot back that sapient machines weren't necessarily an improvement. Stark replied that mechanical bodies could accelerate human progress. Conrad warned that current technology couldn't promise frequent perfect upgrades. What was cutting edge now would just sit as obsolete scrap decades later. Their back and forth drew more researchers in, until the debate split the station. It wasn't a small spat. The entire Jinshi Bay sector, it seemed, had been thrown into disarray. Bai Luan scrolled until his thumb ached. No wonder Herta had asked him to intervene. This was on the verge of spiraling. If Herta handled it herself, she'd either fire the troublemakers or, more likely, shrug and hand it off. Apparently, she'd started down the firing path and then thought of him, so she offloaded the mess instead. He'd been hoping they'd at least have produced something in the meantime. As the investor, Bai Luan had expected progress reports. 2 months without any report could be normal for a research project, but only if the researchers were actually working, not spending half their time throwing barbs at one another across the station. 2 months of arguing yields nothing. He sent a terse message. "Everyone, you all having a good chat?" I'll be at the space station soon. Gather at the containment chamber section in 10 minutes if you can. If not, at least keep your channels open. Be honest and professional. I don't want to have to check up on anyone. The joke face he attached had the desired effect. The chat went silent. Memories of being at the mercy of an acting station master were apparently very motivating. When his ship docked, Bai Luan was met by a Heita puppet standing on the reception platform with its arms folded, watching him disembark. It said nothing, its expression enough of an urging to hurry. He stepped down and couldn't help the dry remark in his head. "Thanks for the pickup." The puppet, checking his phone, gave him a short, amused snort. "You're quite intimidating, aren't you?" it said. Bai Luan shrugged. "They know I can make things difficult, and they can't deal with me." "What are you going to do?" "Scold them. It's either that or fire them. I pulled them along here. I can't just toss them away." The puppet smiled. "You actually show favoritism to them in front of me? If I fired them, would you fire me?" Bai Luan asked. "Why would this genius reward you?" the puppet countered. "See, I still have enough pull to protect them." He thought the station's drama had to be ended before it ate all productivity. He walked toward the containment chamber section. The puppet glanced at his message and laughed softly. "You've got a presence. I'll give you that." Researchers arrived in a flurry, panting, ruffled, clearly rushed. Cameras whirred and swooped. Broadcast screens around the station lit up. Bai Luan ignored the hovering lenses and focused on Stark and Conrad. The two leading factions stood at the center of the crowd, each flanked by their teams, glaring like rivals at a duel. Even now, they didn't look repentant. "Stark, Conrad, come out," Bai Luan said. Both men stepped forward, faces a study in defensiveness and wounded pride. Bai Luan didn't waste time. "What are you two doing? What is there left to argue about?" he demanded. Stark immediately jabbed a finger. "Station master, it's Conrad. Conrad cut in. "Don't listen to him. He's a sapient machine fanatic. If you searched his room, you'd find sapient machine toys. That's just the sort of thing men collect. Do you mean to say you don't have any in your room?" Stark shot back. "I have some, but I would never want my body to become one of those." Conrad replied. Bai Luan raised his hand. Stop. I don't want to hear you trade insults. It gets you nowhere. Answer one simple question. Who does technology serve?" "People," they said at the same time, and then scowled at one another. "Exactly," Bai Luan said. "If technology serves people, the choice of what kind of assistance to accept doesn't belong to you servers. It belongs to those you serve. Instead of arguing whose approach is superior, improve your own work so people will choose you. Look, more people side with me. That's the sharpest attack you can strike." He pulled out a pocket watch and let the hands turn visibly. "You've been arguing here for a month, squandering the most valuable research time of your lives. You call yourselves geniuses. You say you came to follow Miss Heita, to learn from her brilliance. So tell me, in the 2 months you've been on this station, especially this month of arguing, what have you invented?" He let the question hang. He didn't want to hear answers like, "How to win an argument," or a treatise on insulting colleagues. That was the point. Stark opened his mouth, but only a lump of shame stopped him. Conrad bowed his head, unable to meet the station master's steadier gaze. Bai Luan closed the watch with a snap and continued, his voice cold and clear. "Don't be ridiculous. I designed this space station in a month. Miss Heita took 2 months to make her name known across the galaxy. I won't call myself a genius. Miss Heita does. Are you even fit to be called her successors? Don't forget why you're here, to follow Miss Heita and to pursue your own research. Can the version of Miss Heita you want to follow even spare you a glance in your present state?" He turned slowly, addressing everyone in the room. The cameras fed his words to the entire station. His final question cut clean and precise. "Ask yourselves, are you worthy?" 30. This will make you suffer for the rest of your life. 30. This will make you suffer for the rest of your life. The month-long farce finally wound down with Bai Luan's interrogation. Only true geniuses deserve to define their own creations. If something spun out of a genius's mind looked useless, the technology behind it had to be so powerful it felt like magic. The ordinary staff of Heita Space Station could hardly claim that title. Bai Luan's questions, whether they forced everyone to accept reality or simply nudged them to reconsider, had at least made them all ask themselves the same uncomfortable thing. After ending the charade, Bai Luan didn't rush back. People could be appeased. If they'd asked him to stay and work at Heita from the start, he would have refused. But tell him Heita had uncovered more of his secrets, and he'd be willing to return. He liked being farther from Miss Heita now. It gave him a legitimate reason not to be on call every minute. To prevent a repeat of the disruption, he planned to set clear thresholds at the station to keep disputes from escalating. He would also finish assigning departments to the staff, a job he'd left half done when he left. While he was at it, he might design the station uniforms. There were no unified standards yet, and everyone's attire was a mess. MiHoYo had already provided background settings for these matters, so the work felt straightforward and untroublesome. And because the rest of the station treated it as important, he could take his time on things that could be finished quickly. If only he could bring the botanical garden, his room, his robot brother, and Heita's big kitchen here, then life would be perfect. Should he ask Heita? He didn't yet know how the botanical garden felt about going into space, so it was a plan for another day. His phone vibrated. A message from Heita appeared. Heita, I'm transferring Station Master authority to you. Please manage Heita Space Station for a while. I'll be very busy from now on. Whether I reply to messages depends on luck. That's all. What a loss. If he'd known Heita was going into seclusion, he would have stayed. But life was unpredictable. Perhaps she was preparing to meet erudition. A meeting like that would probably sap a large portion of the Heita puppet's computing power. Preparing for it would be a headache. Bai Luan guessed it would keep her busy for at least half a month. He had no reliable way to pin down how brilliant Heita might be. Any estimate felt conservative. He could have asked the Heita in the little black room, but really, knowing or not knowing made no practical difference. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Station Master, our radar has detected an unidentified flying object heading for Azure Star, estimated arrival in over 30 hours. Is it a spaceship? No, we tried to contact it. No response. It shouldn't be a spaceship. Confirm what it is. If it's something like a meteorite, intercept it directly. Yes, Station Master. Bai Luan returned to his staff files. According to MiHoYo's setting, Heita Space Station's departments were roughly divided into Astrodomain Speciesology, Biology, Galactic Jurisprudence, Politics, Cosmic Geodesy, Geography, Abyssal Archives, History, Universal Applied Sciences, Finance, Defense, Medical, and Maintenance. Once the departments were set, the job was just a matching game. Place the right talents in the right departments. The tricky ones were the versatile types. They fit everywhere and made decisions difficult. He made a mental note to flag them and ask their preference later. Before he could get further, someone burst into the station master's office, one of the staff who'd just reported. Panic showed on his face. Station Master, the unidentified object suddenly accelerated. It will be here in just over 10 hours. It accelerated? Are you sure it's not a spaceship? We're not sure now, Station Master. We sent messages, no reply. What should we do? Could it be space pirates? Heita Space Station was famous for housing rare curios. Such places attracted robbers. But a direct assault on the station would be reckless. Have you issued a warning? Per the Interstellar Convention, yes. Do you have images? No, Station Master. The images are interfered with. Blurry. We can't see anything. No response might mean a disabled ship with faulty comms, but active jamming suggested something worse. Bai Luan gave the staff member a steady look. Give me the coordinates of the object. You can stand down for now. I'll handle it. Anyone interfering with his life deserved no mercy. He opened the channel to defense. Target the coordinates for saturation bombardment. Fire until it disappears. Understood, came the terse reply. Heita's defensive batteries swung into motion and opened fire on the coordinates. The station wasn't a warship, but it had formidable armaments for self-defense. Surprising, then, that whatever was out there had technology to resist Heita's detection. Heita's sensors were top tier. An uneasy feeling crawled along Bai Luan's spine. Perhaps the object wasn't pirates at all. Could it be a Stellaron? A chill ran through him. He stood abruptly. Anxiety pushed him from the office, and before he reached the door, a frantic voice came over the channel. Station Master, all attacks were intercepted. At a certain distance from the object, every shot deviated from its projected trajectory. We couldn't score any effective hits. Station Master, it accelerated again! And we're about to see it! Bad news kept coming, confirming his worst suspicion. If he hadn't come to this world, Heita would be on the front line handling it now. Damn the butterfly effect. Stop firing for now to avoid interfering with observation. Keep the object in view and report what it is when we can see it directly. Yes, Bai Luan ran for the containment section, Heita's personally designed facility for holding a stellaron. He changed clothes, straps and thrusters engaged, and ignored the station rule against flying through corridors. Unlock the plan. Read it fast. The plan boiled down to 3 steps. 1. Capture the stellaron with a specialized containment device. 2. Bring it back to the space station. 3. Place it into the final containment facility. He looked at the white containment module and hesitated. The first step should, in space, be performed by an unmanned vessel, but judging by the object's relentless acceleration, it might not cooperate. Station Master, we see it. It's a stellaron. It's moving very fast and heading toward Azure Star. What should we do? To approach a stellaron, that was likely the most dangerous thing Bai Luan had done since arriving here. Give me the coordinates. I'll figure something out. He ducked into the little black room to steel himself. A Heita model looked up at him. You went to the space station again. What are you holding? She asked. Bai Luan managed a wry smile and lifted the containment module. A stellaron is falling toward Azure Star. You're not here, so I'm going to try to contain it. Heita was silent for a moment, studying him. Are you scared? He was taken aback by the blunt question. He smiled wryly and nodded. I'm terrified. Still going, even if you're scared? He hesitated, then nodded firmly. If the stellaron hadn't fallen on Azure Star before he transmigrated, it shouldn't fall on Azure Star now. If fate had been altered, he'd set it back. He wouldn't let nothing become catastrophe. Then go, Heita said. Heita's assistant will not be defeated by a stellaron. Thanks. That helps. Bai Luan looked at the Heita in front of him with complicated eyes. If this is my last trip, will you be sad? What foolishness. If you die, the system's observation will stop and I will disappear. How would I have the chance to be sad? You're right, he scratched his head. I'm leaving. Don't forget. Heita picked up a small notebook, shook it, and held it out. You have a reason to return. Bai Luan glanced at the botanical garden notes he'd scribbled inside, smiled, and said nothing more. He vanished from the little black room with determination, replacing his earlier confusion. Nanobots rippled over his body like boiling liquid metal, shedding any disguise. Silver-white plating surged and took shape into an exosuit, not unlike Sam's mecha. It was his first full-armor configuration. Feeling the amplification and protection the suit gave him, Bai Luan strapped the portable containment module to his back. Thrusters thundered, and he streaked through the station into open space. He kept his eyes on the stellaron, a fast-moving meteor-like thing rushing toward Azure Star. A short, wild laugh escaped him, because suddenly he thought, absurdly and proudly, this counts as his first meeting with Star Dome, right? This counts as holding them when they were little. He charged at the stellaron. Star Dome, I really did hold you when you were little. I'm going to hold that over you for the rest of your lives. Stellaron, I'm coming for you, he shouted as he closed the distance. Aha! Come out! As he blasted out of the Heita space station, the stellaron streaked past Bai Luan, a fast-moving brown streak, an arrow of light screaming toward Azure Star. He had to stop it before it broke through the atmosphere. Blue flames spat from the thrusters on his back, propelling Bai Luan toward the stellaron. The artifact seemed to sense him, and whispering murmurs began clawing at his ears. He had expected that, and hit his armor's shielding system immediately. The whispers cut off as the shield went up. A tiny stellaron trying to corrupt my Tao heart? Bai Luan thought. He reached out, aiming to grab it directly. The stellaron, finding the armor unresponsive to its seductions, changed tactics. A crimson alert sounded from his control panel. The stellaron was marked and charging. A countdown appeared. Target locked. Charging detected. Impact warning. Impact in 34 seconds. Charging? Bai Luan frowned. He thrust his left arm forward. The arm guard reshaped in a precise nanoflow, and an ethereal blue energy field hummed to life, forming a shimmering shield. He braced every muscle like a compressed spring, preparing for the collision. He didn't slow down. If anything, his speed increased as he closed on the Stellaron. Impact warning. 3. The silent void was torn open. From the Stellaron flared rings of visible destructive shockwaves, roaring outward like solidified waves through the star sea, sweeping toward him with crushing intent. Bai Luan slammed into the wave. The force field on his arm violently fluctuated, the blue shield twisting and groaning under unbearable strain. Resistance and recoil hammered back at him as if an invisible giant hand had seized him and would not let go. But he held. The destructive wave was pushed back by that tiny figure, leaving a stubborn dent. The thrusters bellowed as they continued to drive him forward. 200 meters to target. Slowly, steadily, push through, he thought. Grab the Stellaron, shove it into the containment bay behind you, and end this. Azure Star is off limits for your landing. Warning, 3% of the mecha's structure has detached. Reason unknown. Suspected Stellaron influence. Mecha detachment? Bai Luan had been focused entirely on the Stellaron. He hadn't noticed. He glanced at his right arm. The armor there was eroding like a sand sculpture under an unseen hourglass. Particles of cold metallic light peeled away, leaving bare scars. The shockwave wasn't just stopping him, it was eating his suit. If he couldn't contain the Stellaron before the armor failed, he'd die in the starfield. He gritted his teeth. I'm going all out. On his command, the non-core components of the armor disintegrated and dispersed. The stripped nanobots swarmed to his feet like a hive returning home, assembling in an instant into a massive, monstrous thruster that encased his lower legs. Mobility would be lost, but feet were decorative in space. All he needed was more thrust. The left arm shield reconfigured, energy condensed into a high-speed rotating spear of blue light, the Great Drill. He took a deep, last breath from the suit's circulation and then shut down life support. All remaining energy poured into the giant thruster and the drill. Full power, full speed, invincible Great Drill. The drill screamed as it spun. The high-speed rotation shredded the incoming shockwaves like fragile glass. Impact energy and peeled-off nanofragments scattered into the void like silent fireworks. The thruster at his feet vomited a colossal flame, driving Bai Luan forward with unreasonable force. Warning, armor damage reached 6%, 12%. Warning, excessive armor damage in the space environment will cause irreversible consequences to the pilot. 125 meters, 73 meters, 41 meters, 22 meters. The drill cracked and splintered under the strain until it finally disintegrated. It didn't matter. It had done its job. The Stellaron came within arm's reach. Bai Luan lunged, left hand for the Stellaron, right for the containment bay hatch. One more reach, and he could touch it. He activated the containment bay. The hatch yawned open and his hand closed forward, only to strike an invisible barrier. The Stellaron had a shield. Bai Luan pounded the barrier, each punch answered by an unyielding force. They were already above Azure Star. The atmosphere was imminent. Warning, sustained impact, 30 seconds until armor disintegration. Modules failed one by one. The shielding module died, and those seductive whispers flooded his ears again, this time stripped of temptation, leaving only a contemptuous chuckle. Heh! The last breath he'd taken before killing life support pressed down. Suffocation clawed him, but Bai Luan drew a cold, humorless smile like a dying wolf baring final fangs. He hadn't lost yet. He had one trump card left. Aha! He shouted with everything he had. I know you're watching. If you don't want to ruin your fun later, come out and help me. He felt a gaze settle on him. He didn't know where from, only that something watched. Laughter erupted in his ears. Ha ha ha! I didn't expect to be discovered. Something Akivili couldn't even do. Yet you did it. Ha ha! It's not even as good as Immortal. When did you figure it out? Oh right, you're dying. A blessing surged into him. Breath and pain vanished. Power flooded his limbs. Want to become an emanator of elation? The voice offered. He wasn't dead. Bai Luan gave a short, relieved laugh. Without hesitation, using the blessing's power, he punched through the Stellaron's barrier, grabbed the artifact, and hurled it into the containment bay. He slammed the hatch shut and sealed it. Then he spoke back into the empty starfield. I'll consider it. Oh dear, Aha has truly lost face this time, the voice replied, mock annoyed but delighted at a new toy. This god of amusement wouldn't give blessings freely. If he agreed, it would only be for the amusement. By the way, this blessing has a time limit. When it ends, Aha doesn't know either. 6. Bai Luan rolled his eyes at Aha and shot for the Heita space station. He wasn't scared Aha would take the power back. Aha liked long-term fun. But the containment bay could only hold a Stellaron for 3 minutes. It had to be transferred to a sealed facility. His damaged armor made the return slow. Time was a luxury he couldn't waste. Back inside Heita, he canceled the full armor configuration, used remaining nanobots to fashion a barely functional thruster, and raced toward the containment facility. 10 seconds left. He smashed through multiple valves, tore through Heita's illusion. He couldn't wait for systems to cycle. He needed the Stellaron secured. He did it fast, but not fast enough. The countdown on the containment bay hit 0, with the artifact still charging. Damn. He pressed his pocket watch with a flat expression. Time had run out, but he could make the whole world pause for 7 seconds. Time-stopping pocket watch, kid. He opened the containment bay to find the Stellaron fully charged and primed to unleash a shockwave that would have killed him if his watch failed. He shoved the artifact into the facility and slammed the control to activate the seal. 7 seconds passed. He exhaled. It was over. The pocket watch's hour hand ticked to its last moment. Time resumed. And then, disaster struck. Before the containment field completed, the Stellaron expelled one last shockwave. It headed straight for Bai Luan. He only had time to raise an arm. The pocket watch in his hand collided with the shockwave and shattered. The time law sealed within it went berserk, tearing open a temporal turbulence. In the instant before the wave struck him, the turbulence sucked Bai Luan in. The residual shockwave blasted into a wall, punching a massive hole, but the facility held and the Stellaron went dormant, sealed. As for Bai Luan, nobody knew where the temporal storm had carried him. Half an hour later, Heita arrived at the chaotic scene and looked at the sealed Stellaron. This genius didn't check her phone for half an hour and caused such a mess. You're unbelievable, she said, turning toward the spot where Bai Luan had vanished. Dying here would be such a shame. This genius will find a way to get you back. Ah-ha, he strikes again. When Bai Luan came to, he found himself in a bizarre kaleidoscopic blur. The world felt upside down. A sharp vertigo and sense of imbalance clawed at him. Images flickered and shifted in ways words couldn't catch. Close your eyes. The system's voice sounded, oddly comforting. He obeyed and squeezed his eyes shut. What's happening? Where am I? I'm really going to throw up. I only left for a moment because my mentor called me, and you managed to get yourself into a time vortex. How did you do that? I remember you were still slacking off when I left. Bai Luan forced a laugh. What else could I do? I'm desperate here. I've been caught in a time vortex. That's right. Generally, accidentally entering one is the same as dying. Even if you get out, your body will either age catastrophically or regress and die. What about me? I'm protecting you. You won't die. Thanks. We're bros. Come on. Nice. Bai Luan asked again, anxiously. So how do I get out? Seriously, I'm going to be sick. I'm working on it. Just throw up if you need to. Your vomit might randomly appear at any time and place, though. Bai Luan had already vomited by the time the system finished speaking and caught the tail end of the sentence in a queasy haze. Wait, are you saying the pile I just hurled could have infinite possibilities now? Who told you to be so quick with your mouth? Will it show up at some critical moment later and ruin my life? I want to see that. I want to see my most important day ruined by vomit from years ago. Hey, that's disgusting. Ha ha ha, I'm kidding. Look how worried you are. If it actually happens, I'll remind you. I don't have weird fetishes. The probability of that happening is astronomically small. You shouldn't have mentioned it. All right, in a moment oh my, she actually did it. What is it? It seems I don't need to do anything. At that instant, a suction force grabbed Bai Luan and yanked him away. He felt himself plunged into a tide and instinctively held his breath, opening his eyes to a swirl of pale blue liquid. Through the thick, curved, transparent wall around him, he made out a metallic ceiling, instrument lights blinking in the gloom. He was inside some kind of nutrient capsule in a laboratory. He recognized the figure outside. Heita. Bai Luan rapped his knuckles against the capsule wall. The sound thudded, dull and urgent. Heita's unblinking eyes turned and looked into the pod. He forced a smile and waved through the solution. The capsule door slid open without warning. The viscous nutrient fluid poured out like a bursting dam, and it carried the unprepared Bai Luan with it. Whew! He landed awkwardly on the cold, smooth floor, gasping as the water choked his lungs. He shook his hair, soaking wet. He understood why Heita had pulled him out of the time vortex, but why put him in a nutrient capsule? Then he remembered the system's warning. Even if you escape, your body could age or regress instantly and die. Heita had calculated the landing and used a nutrient capsule to stabilize him. Yet under the system's protection, he hadn't changed at all, which would mean Heita's legs appeared in his field of view. How come you haven't changed at all? Bai Luan looked up from under dripping bangs and met Heita's deep, curious eyes. Confusion was plain on her face, and beneath that a pure, burning scientific interest flickered. Tsk, how did he always manage to spark this genius curiosity with a messy entrance, he thought, half amused at himself. He stood, trying for calm. It's simple, Miss Heita. He straightened his sodden clothes as best he could and added with a teasing grin, Aha has made a move again. Aha, watching secretly. You rascal, doing this again. How delightful. Saving you back then was the right call. You were blessed by Aha when you contained the stellar roar, right? How did that happen? Heita asked. Bai Luan smiled without answering directly. I won't say. It wouldn't be fun if I did. Miss Heita, you can ask him yourself. If Aha was watching because of the system, the less he revealed the better. He could have invented a plausible story and taken credit, but that would only turn mysterious advantage into ordinary cleverness. He'd rather keep Aha curious, a trump card he could rely on. Is your project complete? He asked. Heita smiled in a way he couldn't quite read. It was finished long ago, centuries ago. Centuries? Bai Luan blinked. Heita rarely exaggerated. This genius, Heita said, emphasizing each syllable as if testing the words, did not exaggerate. No exaggeration? Bai Luan felt the ground tilt. How long was I actually trapped in the time vortex? It's now Amber Era 2157. It's been about 10 Amber Eras since you disappeared. 10 Amber Eras. The number hit him like cold water. No, his voice rose and shook. I was only in there for a few minutes. You pulled me out right away, didn't you? He tried to make sense of it. He had spent minutes in a pocket of space, yet everything he knew had become history 900, maybe 1,000 years old. The people, the bonds, the petty hopes of his time, eroded by centuries into nothing but museum exhibits or vague folklore. The idea was absurd, unfair, and unscientific. She's telling the truth, he muttered, staring at Heita as if her eyes might suddenly lie. Questions crowded his throat. Where were the people he knew? What traces remained? But the words stuck, and all he could produce was a long, heavy sigh. After centuries, would anything remain of the world he came from? He already knew the answer. The past had likely become dust in archives or mere specimens behind glass. Heita's voice softened, or perhaps it was just his hope hearing softness. I know you need time to accept this. I'll give you some space. She hadn't changed. Time had left no trace on her face. It was as if she were still from 10 Amber Eras earlier. The static purity of her presence made the gulf between him and the past feel even more abrupt and desolate. Why? He asked finally. Why would you spend so much time pulling me out of there? Reason, she tilted her head, voice flat. There are many things worth mentioning. Why Aha blessed you, how you got trapped. But the main reason is this. Extracting someone from a time vortex is a difficult problem. It's a challenge that runs across time and requires high-dimensional spatiotemporal operations, harder than reversing aging. A pure researcher's gleam flashed in her eyes. And I like solving hard problems. To me, it's a toy I can play with for a very long time. A problem that occupied Heita for 10 Amber Eras. The explanation fit her completely. Bai Luan couldn't argue with that. Then she added in the same even tone, with a pause that made him listen harder. During that time, there was no suitable person to take your place. Her words struck him with an odd warmth wrapped in bittersweetness. Thank you, he said softly. His eyes softened, and a small, sad smile touched his lips. Thank you for remembering me after 10 Amber Eras. Heita's reply was practical. No need to thank me. You did contain the stellar ore when I wasn't around. As a reward, I kept your room for you. It's still there? Untouched. Without another word, Bai Luan hurried off, the confusion and grief replaced by a frantic longing. His little room, his proof of existence, was the only tangible connection to the past he could grasp. Heita hooked his collar with her staff and caught him as he stumbled. What's the rush? The room isn't going anywhere. This genius won't have you running around my house soaking wet. Go change first. This place has changed a lot over the years. I'll send you a new map. He obediently let himself be guided. He knew he'd lost his composure. He would never have run like this before, but he needed to see his small nest, to know something of his past still remained. 33. Let's go. Set off. Bai Luan changed into a fresh set of clothes, tucked his phone away, and stared at the new file Heita had sent. Heita herself hadn't altered much, but her home had been significantly remodeled. So many details clashed with his memory that he'd need time to re-record everything. He pushed that headache aside for now and decided to find his own little room first. The scenery gradually grew familiar. When that sight finally came into view, something fluttered in Bai Luan's chest. His little nook still stood in the distance, stubborn and proud. It was as if a single brave silhouette had burst out of an old faded film, an almost tragic insistence on surviving. Amid so many changes, it held its corner of the world and refused to be erased. Quietly, patiently, it had waited for him. Warmth and a little ache flooded his throat. Bai Luan smiled as he opened the door. Inside, everything was the same. If not for the changes he'd seen outside that confirmed Heita's account, he might have doubted that centuries had passed. Outside felt like the future. Inside felt like the past. The incongruity struck him as absurd. He sat on the bed. Whether he wanted to admit it or not, centuries had passed. He couldn't go back. What had happened to the people and things he'd known? Inspiration, Shroom, the botanical garden, the material distribution robot, Stark, Conrad, the old rookies. He grabbed a pillow, hugged it, rolled across the bed in a moment of childish comfort, then breathed in the familiar scent of the room. It was time. Time to move toward what others called the present and what he called the future. He put the pillow down and stood, eyeing the messy bed. I'll tidy it when I return, he thought, a small, childish resolution that made him chuckle. His laugh echoed in the empty room and chased away a corner of gloom. He would not run from their endings. To flee would be to betray the past. He went to the botanical garden. He'd planned to run all the way there, but too much had changed en route. He had to stop and check the map again and again. A trip that once would have been quick took him far longer. After the familiar disinfection gate, he stepped into the garden. The plants were still there, but none of them recognized him. Chihiro, who had once been cared for here, was gone. He stopped in a corner and called out softly, half to himself, half as a joke. Inspiration Guli Guli Wacha Inspiration Shroom. The brown mushroom with white spots that should have been there was gone. Of course, a mushroom couldn't live for centuries. The most likely survivor in the area was the material distribution robot, so he headed to the distribution station. The station looked the same, but the robot behind the counter was not the one he remembered. Bai Luan smiled and greeted it. The robot glanced up. Hello. Materials will be delivered to the requested location. There is no need to come here for pickup. Bai Luan's smile faltered and then softened with emotion. I know. The distribution robot turned back to its work. Bai Luan studied it. The model had changed. On impulse, he asked, half embarrassed by his own absurdity, do you know a robot that used to greet people? He laughed at himself as soon as the words left his mouth. Asking a machine for a memory, how could it know? He began to walk away when the robot surprised him. Do you need me to lead you? It asked. You know? He said yes. With that, it led him deeper into the station. After a long walk through corridors of humming machines, they came to a forgotten corner. A robot stood there like a relic. Rust spread over its shell like vines, joints warped and immobile. It looked like steel wreckage abandoned on a battlefield. That's the robot that used to greet people, the distributor said. Is it really not scrapped? Bai Luan whispered. Most of its functions have failed, but it still operates. I will take my leave now. The distributor left, and Bai Luan stepped closer to the old unit. The model was right. But could this battered thing truly be the same one? He approached cautiously. The robot seemed to sense him. Its scratched screen face flickered and with terrible slowness turned toward him. The image stabilized briefly on Bai Luan's face, then froze. Its mechanical arm creaked and lifted, pointing in his direction. A stuttering, static-laced synthesized voice filled the quiet corner like an echo across centuries. Hello, you are 964 years late. The number confirmed it. This was the one. Bai Luan sat opposite the frozen machine and looked at the scars. Rust like the moss of time and wear that told a silent story marked its body. He felt a rush of apology. "I'm sorry. Today, you did not break your promise," the robot said. "But I came too late," Bai Luan said softly. The robot studied him as if making a final decision. It swiveled its head and, from a still-working optical lens, projected a faint, static-filled beam. An image appeared, familiar and painfully small. "Is it recording, Shroom?" the old robot asked. "This is," Bai Luan began, surprised. The old robot's voice had the calm of something that had completed its duty. "I tried to find you, did not find you, but found them." Bai Luan understood. "Shroom doesn't know where you went. Everyone worried about you, Shroom. Many plants withered. If you were here, Shroom would know their last words, Shroom." The projection crackled. "Shroom asked Miss Heita where you went, and she said Shroom would never see you again, Shroom. Shroom cannot go. Shroom has no legs to search for you, Shroom. Did you go very far? How could you forget to come back, Shroom?" the recording asked, then answered itself, plaintive and simple. "Shroom can only ask the big Iron Man to deliver a message for Shroom. No matter what, remember to come back, Shroom. Finally, let's say that again, Shroom. Inspiration Guli Guli Wacha, Inspiration Shroom. Thank you for teaching Shroom these things. Shroom doesn't know what they mean, but they must be important to you, Shroom. That's all Shroom has to say. Goodbye, Shroom. Big Iron Man, please deliver Shroom's message, Shroom." Bai Luan watched the whole recording in silence. Inspiration Shroom had waited too. He had been gone far too long. He stood, determination settling like a weight and a promise. At least one of them, he told himself. He would save at least one. He lifted the old robot onto his back and started to carry it out. "What are you doing?" the robot asked as Bai Luan hoisted it. "I'm going to fix you," Bai Luan said. "Why?" the old unit stammered. "For waiting," he answered simply. A stream of data flashed in the robot's dim optical lens. "It seems you didn't forget us." Bai Luan gave a wry smile. "I don't think I ever will." "Inspiration, Shroom, I put it in that refrigerator. Do you want to see it?" the robot said haltingly. Bai Luan's confusion dissolved into sudden hope. The refrigerator, the super-preserving fridge that kept anything placed inside unchanged. Could it be? Could Inspiration Shroom still be inside, perfectly preserved? His breath quickened. Is there still a chance? "Yes, there is. Let us," the robot said, its arm straining up toward the path ahead. It pointed, and in a voice that was almost a whisper, it finished. "Set. Off. I don't have anything." The voice stuttered again, slow and halting. "I don't have anything." Bai Luan carried the robot and walked up to the refrigerator AI. As a piece of household infrastructure in Miss Heita's home, the refrigerator AI had stood in the same place for over 900 years, looking little changed. Bai Luan set the robot down and knocked on the fridge, waking its consciousness. "Who? Who wakes me up so rudely?" A blue dot appeared on the screen, frowning in simulated anger as it scanned the room. It paused when it saw Bai Luan, and then noticed the small, immobile machine at his feet. After a moment of silence, the refrigerator AI said, mildly astonished, "You weren't lying. He actually came to find me." The robot replied in its stuttering cadence, "I also don't have a lying function." "Who cares about your functions?" the refrigerator AI snapped. "You insisted on stuffing that mushroom and that paper crane inside me before. Was that in your functions?" Before the robot could answer, the fridge interrupted. Okay, spare me the details. You look like you're about to die." Then it turned its attention to Bai Luan. "Isn't this my chef who disappeared for hundreds of years? How did you know to come back?" Bai Luan gave a small, weary explanation. "I was trapped in a temporal anomaly. It only felt like a few minutes to me, but for you it was 964 years. The refrigerator AI hummed. "I don't understand your gibberish, but I have to tell you, that tin can over there went berserk." "Berserk?" "Yes, First, it abandoned its post and ran off to look for you. Then it tried to force a mushroom and a paper crane into me for storage. It made such a fuss that even Miss Heita came. And then, Miss Heita said, to cause so much trouble even while absent, he truly is a genius. Then she just left it be. If you'd come back any later. The refrigerator AI glanced at the robot propped silently against its casing. It would have reached its lifespan limit and shut down. My matter doesn't matter. Inspiration shroom, where is it? The robot croaked. That's exactly what I'm about to show you. The refrigerator AI opened its door. Two mechanical arms extended and lifted out a flower pot. In the pot, a mushroom grew, and on top of it sat a paper crane. Its cap had brownish-white spots and was a little larger than Bai Luan remembered, but there was no mistaking it. The inspiration shroom. It looked wilted. The AI set the pot on the floor. All three gazes, Bai Luan's and those of the two machines, focused on the mushroom. It failed? Someone whispered. Bai Luan said nothing. He only watched the inspiration shroom and the paper crane. Keeping that mushroom alive had always been difficult. He knew that better than anyone. Still, he held on to hope. A beam of sunlight fell across the paper crane. The tiny, originally dormant head of the crane, Chihiro, twitched. Its stiff body, preserved for centuries inside the refrigerator AI's field, began to move. Joints that had not flexed in ages loosened. It unfolded its wings, flapped a few uncertain times, and rose from the mushroom. Bai Luan cupped his hands like a small landing platform. Chihiro made a graceful turn in the air and settled on his palm. I didn't expect the refrigerator AI to have a dormancy function in addition to preservation. Amazing, the fridge said, already smug. Chihiro's voice, weak but clear, came from the little crane. Mushroom, it was very uncomfortable inside you, Mushroom. Good, I only stayed a short while. Mushroom. What are you talking about? Uncomfortable. It's lucky I let you in, and only a short while? You stayed with me for over 800 years. Mushroom speaks the truth. Born a mushroom, one can't be too honest. Mushroom. The inspiration shroom regarded the robot with puzzled affection. Big Iron Man, why are you like this? You were clearly... Could it really have been that long, Mushroom? Inspiration shroom, Bai Luan said softly. At the sound of his voice, the mushroom trembled and brightened. Bai Luan, you're back? Big Iron Man, you didn't lie to me. Now I can see Bai Luan, Mushroom. Also, didn't I tell you, Mushroom? If you stand behind me, I can't see you either, Mushroom. The robot fumbled to lift the flower pot and turned the mushroom toward Bai Luan. Mushroom. You haven't changed at all, Mushroom. You wouldn't team up to trick me, would you, Mushroom? After I went in, did that much time really pass, Mushroom? Bai Luan smiled and answered, a very long time passed. At least for you, it was very long. Mushroom. The inspiration shroom mulled it over and then shrugged in its own odd way. Forget it, Mushroom. A mushroom doesn't need to understand human matters so clearly. Mushroom. It brightened and added, anyway, welcome home, Mushroom. Images, not close but not entirely distant, flickered through Bai Luan's mind and then vanished. They were gone for good. How could that time not have been a final goodbye? A hollowing ache opened in him. But then he felt the smooth paper of Chihiro in his palm, the mushroom cap trembling before him, the faint operational hum of the broken robot at his feet. Tiny, stubborn presences like sparks in the dark illuminating the ground under his feet. He wasn't completely empty-handed. A tangle of emotion, sadness, relief, nostalgia, and stillness settled in his chest. It softened, finally shaping itself into a genuine smile. He looked at the mushroom trying to see him, at the paper crane flapping gently in his hand, at the rusted but steadfast metal of the robot, and he said softly, "Yes, I'm home." He decided to take the inspiration shroom with him for the time being and told the refrigerator AI he'd come back for the robot later. The fridge grumbled. What a hassle. I'm a refrigerator AI. I'm supposed to preserve food. Now I'm storing strange things and babysitting robots. What have I become? I caused trouble, the robot murmured. The blue dot on the refrigerator AI's interface flickered as if it were sighing. Forget it. Who made that kid's cooking was interesting, anyway. Its tone shifted, oddly fond. But honestly, Tin Can, I actually admire you. The robot said nothing. It leaned quietly against the refrigerator AI. The fridge continued, its electronic voice carrying something that wasn't purely logical. Back then, You almost asked every movable and immovable device on the station, didn't you? Like a persistent ghost, you kept searching for a human who might no longer exist. Why did you do it? I also don't know. The robot answered, its voice slow as gears turning. It had asked its logic modules the same question many times, but the modules couldn't answer. The robot tilted its head, resting it against the fridge as if a traveler found shade under a big tree. Perhaps it's just because I wanted to do it. Chapter 35, Their Whole Life. Heita looked at Bai Luan, her assistant, who rarely sought her out on his own. You said you want to learn mechanical construction? Yes. Why? I want to recast and upgrade a robot. Your armor? No, not that. Heita thought for a moment, then nodded as if she had found the answer. It's the material distribution robot, isn't it? Bai Luan was a little surprised and smiled. I didn't expect you to remember, Miss Heita. They say important people are forgetful. Actually, it's just that those things aren't worth remembering for a genius like me. I'll send you the files. Will that be enough time? Bai Luan returned her smile and asked, Miss Heita, are you offering to help me? Think carefully. My help is expensive. Haha, this isn't worth troubling you. I learn fast. Is that so? Heita took out her phone, tapped the screen, and a file transfer arrived. You have received Heita's file. When Bai Luan opened it, a torrent of files appeared. The total runtime was estimated at over 500 hours. No problem, he had the little black room. Time to study was the one thing Bai Luan never lacked. His eyes snagged on the main speaker column. Stark, Conrad. Were these recorded courses? Bai Luan looked up at Heita. I didn't pick them on purpose. They just fit what you need best. Is that so? It seems them have done something, she said. From an ordinary perspective, yes, very good. Go home and watch them slowly. Miss Heita, whether it was pulling me out of the temporal turbulence or allowing the robots to continue existing, I thank you for everything this time. Heita nodded, expressionless and perfunctory. I know. Bai Luan felt a small sting. To avoid this happening again, I'll be direct. I do these things because I want to, not for you. I don't expect gratitude. That you could make me remember you for so long is your own doing. You don't need to thank me. During Bai Luan's absence, Heita had considered finding someone to replace him, someone capable of managing Heita space station. She searched for hundreds of years and found no one. After he vanished, she discovered a half-finished plan for the station's future in his office. She polished it and had been using it ever since. It had been something Bai Luan had put together casually in a few days. No guarantees he hadn't been slacking, but it worked. No one else she found matched his intelligence, efficiency, or lack of trouble. The station master job had been given to a Heita puppet merely out of necessity. Heita crossed her arms and thought back across her long life as a genius. Bai Luan's presence was unusual. If you really want to repay me, she said, after you rest, go manage the station, or keep using your ability to see the future to save me trouble. Either is fine. Both are more useful than words. Oh right, the prophet persona. He had been so focused on the 900 years that had slipped by in an instant that he'd nearly forgotten about that. The station master position at Heita Space Station is still open? Heita glanced at him. Not for long. There were only a few years left before the main story began. Miss Heita, have any corporate families contacted you recently with plans to report something? You're well informed. You don't look like you've been sealed away for hundreds of years. Explaining would be messy, so Bai Luan didn't. He smiled and said, check occasionally. You might find unexpected benefits. The station master post was tempting, but not what Bai Luan wanted. The best person for it was Asta. Since you mentioned it, I'll send a puppet over. That'll do, Heita agreed. Bai Luan smiled, nodded, and left. Before Asta arrived, he planned to bolster the station's armaments. The Antimatter Legion would soon attack the Heita space station. Both the station and he needed stronger combat readiness. He found a nearby lab, picked a corner, and entered the little black room. Inside, everything was as it had been before he went to contain the Stellaror. Heita had grown used to the room's mutable environment. Was the containment successful? She asked. Yes, but a lot happened. Bai Luan rummaged for projection equipment, assembled it, and connected it to his phone. There was an accident during containment. I was caught in temporal turbulence. By the time you rescued me, More than 900 years had passed outside. Many things are unrecognizable now. Herta fell silent. What about the botanical garden? Luckily, the inspiration shroom survived. As for the rest, I might go back and see later. Maybe this notebook will be used for diaries from now on. Are you all right? Bai Luan paused, then smiled at her. He thought seriously for a moment and said, a little sad, but more than that, I'm grateful. There are still things around me that remind me of the past, like you. No matter what, you're still here. Herta offered a faint smile. Looks like I, a genius, don't need lessons in how to comfort you. I'm pretty resilient, aren't I? The projection equipment finished assembling. Bai Luan wasted no time and opened the first file. Two figures appeared, Stark and Conrad. They were a bit older than he remembered. Stark had a beard, Conrad had more lines, but their mannerisms were the same. Just days ago, he'd been cursing these heavyweights from 900 years ago. Stark began, "This course is meant to help everyone get started and to summarize what we've learned in a year. We record once a year. The length varies." Conrad, standing beside him, smiled. The idea began as a whim from the man next to me. As they say, a fool's sudden inspiration can outshine a schemer's plotting. I'm neither fool nor schemer, but I think this will follow that logic. He won't keep it up. Stark punched Conrad in mock outrage. If you don't want to record, get out. Conrad nimbly dodged. See, you're mad again. Watching the two old men bicker, Bai Luan smiled. After the teasing, they fell into a serious rhythm, carefully explaining basics, one narrating, the other filling in, trading roles with perfect harmony. Bai Luan watched as if spellbound. These recordings weren't just condensed lessons from Stark and Conrad's work. They were a way to cross time and meet them again. Hours slipped by. The content deepened, their faces changed. As the lessons accumulated, the two men aged on screen. Flecks of white at the temples spread into patches and finally into full heads of white hair. The little black room let him watch without sleeping. 500 hours went by in a blur. At last the series reached its end. Stark, his voice shaking, finished the last point, then turned to face the camera with Conrad. You've completed the course. Congratulations. One last thing we must say. Stark leaned on his cane and looked at Conrad with a touch of triumph. Who said I couldn't keep it up back then? Speak up. You still remember that. It's been over 50 years. You haven't forgotten either. Ha! All right, I give up. I misjudged you. Hey, it was worth it. 50 years of persistence paid off. Their playful banter faded. They faced the camera and spoke plainly. Technology, no matter what kind, must ultimately serve people. And we, however great our achievements, are merely waiters. True good or bad can only be judged by those who are served. Only geniuses can judge themselves. As waiters, we have no right to judge. They exchanged glances and said together, no matter how great we think our technology is, only when it helps those we want to help and serves those we want to serve can we, these waiters, these scientists, stand tall. Children, class dismissed. Then they broke into laughter. Stark first, an old booming laugh, and Conrad joining in. Their laughter was not youthful or loud so much as open and satisfied, tempered by the weight of experience and the relief of a long task completed. The course that had spanned their lives, over 50 years, ended with that laughter. Bai Luan stared at the screen, stunned, unable to move. The file looped, returning to the opening lecture. This course aims to help everyone get started. He sat rigid, eyes hollow, watching the young and old images overlap and flicker, two versions of the same lives, braided together across decades. Tears slipped down his cheeks, leaving clear, wet streaks. He reached up and touched the dampness, as if touching 50 years of time that had silently flowed and finally merged into the sea of stars. He murmured, voice choked almost imperceptibly. This is their lives. They lived a worthy life. 36. The feeling of being alive. After returning from the time anomaly, Bai Luan's schedule filled up fast. There were the pocket watch and the armor to repair, ways to acquire more powerful curios to boost his combat strength, and the task of forging a new body for the resource allocation robot. His holiday from Herta was over, and he had to step in at Herta Space Station and work on improving its combat capabilities. Overall, his life was busy. Watching Stark's and Conrad's courses had sharpened his forging skills considerably. The pocket watch, however, was too badly wrecked. Many parts were destroyed beyond simple repair, and the original blueprints were gone, so it went on the back burner. The armor, his main source of power, was prioritized. It was made of nanobots, so repairing it was straightforward. Produce a batch of nanobots, upload the manufacturing blueprint, and let them self-replicate. He only had to supply the raw materials. Treating them like pets wasn't a bad analogy. If he wanted them to look like a pet, he could give them a mimicry mode. Fortunately, he no longer had to spend Heita's money to build his things. Retrieving his accounts had its complications. Normally, dormant accounts would be canceled, but these three had become classics and periodically rose in popularity again. The localized Plants vs. Zombies set in the Swarm Disaster universe, for example, had branched into multiple versions over the years under other authors, and each paid Red sent royalties back to Bai Luan. Over time, those payments had accumulated into a very, very large sum. The cycle, popularity, fade, renaissance, had made those accounts untouchable. Some people even visited them as a kind of pilgrimage. Fashion is cyclical was the most liked comment under those three accounts. Even the original poster of that comment had been gone for years. The company had designs on seizing the accounts, but Heita stepped in. One sharp, "Don't touch them" from her was enough to end their ambitions. I, Bai Luan, will say this once more. Working under Heita demands excellent professional skill and nothing else. And that one nothing else? If you look closer, it's your own problem. Heita's personality is difficult to get along with. Shut up. I forbid you to slander the perfect Miss Heita. She is perfect. Ahem. Moving on. With Heita's help, Bai Luan recovered his accounts and his credit card. The points on it were astronomical. He was already financially free before, and now even more so. He could probably use that one card to manipulate local prices if he wanted. Only Aha hoped he actually would. No one else did. With raw materials no longer an issue, the armor was repaired quickly. The armor itself wasn't a curio, its individual nanobots were. Curio, nanobots, directly bound to you. Without your authorization, others may not use them. Controllable by thought without implants. Once the armor was functioning and his hands were back in practice, Bai Luan turned to the robot. Its chassis had reached its limit. He had to dismantle the core and build a new one. If the old core was a dilapidated house, the upgrade was a luxury apartment. He aimed the new body at the level of a sentient mechanical life form. After 900 years of waiting, even something inexpensive was enough to buy a new life. Whether it would be called a robot or a sentient mechanical being didn't bother him. He had the means to create it, and no one could stop him. Body forging always threw curveballs that could stump him for months, though months in the little black room often meant mere moments in real time. Outwardly, the miracle was compressed. A genius created a robot that stunned the industry after 3 days of study. Fortunately, only Heita knew the truth. If the company had found out, members of the Genius Society would have appeared at his door. He'd had enough quarrels with them when reclaiming his accounts. The robot's new body didn't aim for human mimicry. It was obviously a machine. Smooth yet angular metal shell, a humanoid face with distinct mechanical features, altogether mechanical and aesthetic. Bai Luan placed the upgraded core inside, activated the system, and watched the core begin to pump power like a heart, bringing each module online. Mechanical eyes lit, a blue glow filled the pupils. It awakened. It seemed slightly disoriented at first, lifting its arms to examine its flexible hands. The linkages in its 10 fingers moved smoothly, with an agility almost indistinguishable from human dexterity. "Is this my hand?" a metallic but clear voice asked, curiosity threaded through its tone. "Yes, your hand." "Can I return to my post?" "Of course." Bai Luan smiled. It felt extravagant to endow a resource allocation unit with such advanced hardware, but he didn't build the upgrade for duty. He built it to be free. You're still a resource allocation robot in function, but you're also more than that. A wonderful feeling. Shu, because that's what it would soon be called, bowed its head and studied the chest plate, fingers tracing the cold metal. "It's like waking from a chaotic dream. My thoughts are clearer and faster. I seem smarter." "Something like that. Oh, I gave you a name." "A name. It's long. Shu Stark Conrad. The name was literal. I, Stark, and Conrad fixed you. Why Bai Luan didn't put his own name in? Because he wasn't dead yet." "It's really long," Shu said. "Use the short form. Call yourself Shu. Shu didn't react much to that. It stood up. The new body's sensitivity was high. There were many components to adapt to. It looked at Bai Luan, at its creator. What do you need me to do? Bai Luan shook his head. I don't know. Ask yourself. From now on, this is your life. Shu fell silent. After 900 years of waiting, dismantlement and reconstruction, and an expanded mental horizon, everything distilled into that single instruction. Ask yourself. Slowly, the corner of its mechanically precise mouth curved upward, an expression not programmed but born of an epiphany, a joy of existence erupting from the depths of its core. It flexed its fingers and felt the steady pulse of energy through its circuits, the flood of data from light and sound. An unfamiliar warmth, hard to quantify with logical code, budded and spread inside its metal frame. There is a kind of... Shu's voice deepened, vibrated with something almost like emotion, then spoke the truth it had just grasped, the feeling of being alive. Black, tower, momentum, power. Black, tower, momentum, power. Shu finally decided to go to the space station, and Bai Luan supported him without hesitation. Heita arranged an identity for Shu so he could enter the station posing as an intelligent mechanical staff member. Shu also brought his inspiration shroom to the Heita space station. The two of them had known each other for a long time. Bai Luan trusted Shu completely. Heita, watching what Bai Luan had managed to build in just 3 days, wondered if she'd been too generous with his holiday. If she really had given him a long vacation, who knew what earth-shattering projects he would have produced? If Bai Luan hadn't been snatched by the time stream over 900 years ago and had stayed by her side, constantly pushing his limits like this, what would he be now? A genius that even erudition would notice? Interesting. Very interesting. Heita made a mental note to keep a closer eye on Bai Luan. Maybe one day she'd have another Genius Society member in her faction. 2 from Heita's ranks in the Genius Society would be something to brag about. Shu left a step ahead of Bai Luan to serve as scout and survey the current condition of the space station. After more than 9 centuries and given Shu's sudden appearance status to outsiders, ostracism was a real risk. Careful reconnaissance would ease the transition. Meanwhile, Bai Luan spent the rest of his vacation forging oddities. The results of an oddity forger were always a matter of luck. Once he had created a pocket watch that became something like a time-stop pocket watch, divine tier. But after that, his luck had felt like a gotcha draw after a big pull, nothing special. Still, if he could produce gold-tier items even occasionally, the logic went, then persistent forging might eventually yield a legendary item. With that in mind, Bai Luan threw himself into creation. Time flew. Over the remaining days Heita had given him, Bai Luan forged more than 1,000 oddities. 99% were useless. The handful that were actually usable included Oddity, Cybermask, a cybernetic full-face mask with cold, hard metal lines and an electronic display that can show various expressions. Its default expression is a devilish, almost maniacal smile. Though outwardly deranged, the mask grants the wearer absolute rationality. Oddity, Anywhere Door. A pink wooden door inspired by a strange blue fat cat, the door ignores spatial distance and allows direct traversal. It has 2 modes, random teleportation, no cooldown, unpredictable destination, and fixed point teleportation, only to places you've visited before, usable once every 24 hours. Oddity, Chainsword. For lovers of brutal aesthetics and shredding foes, press the button, feel the roar, watch the splatter. Includes a machine spirit. Oddity, Bolter. A violent firearm, also with a machine spirit. Otherwise similar in purpose to the chainsword. Oddity, Symptom Extraction Gun. Forcibly extracts a disease from a body and compresses it into a bullet, producing a healing effect. The extracted material can be turned into negative bullets for offensive use. Storage of negative bullets is risky. If one breaks while in a negative state, the disease can transfer to whoever handles it. The more complex the disease, the higher grade the specialized bullet required. 1,000 to 5 drop rate was astronomically low, far worse than an 80-pull pity. The Anywhere Door had 2 modes only because the system generously strengthened it a second time. Originally, it offered only random teleportation. Random teleportation was incredibly powerful but unnerving. You never knew what would be on the other side. A predator, an enemy, or some awkward encounter. Adding fixed-point teleportation made the door far more practical. It wasn't a warp anchor, but it gave Bai Luan a workable method of interstellar travel. The cyber mask, in one word, was cool. Bai Luan had deliberately set the mask's default grin to be unnerving. Opponents would think they'd found a lunatic, while the mask's true effect kept the wearer serenely rational. Deception had its own beauty. The chainsword and bolter were simply excessive weapons. Since forging them, he hadn't yet seen a machine spirit fully manifest. Those tended to appear only in battle, when matters turned desperate. The mask was useful to prevent himself from getting carried away with those weapons. The symptom extraction gun was a rare medical oddity. With it, Bai Luan could treat illnesses without studying medicine. Mara struck? Maybe it could be treated. If he ever found a test subject, he might try. The rest of the oddities were mostly trivial. A super hard baseball bat that was simply super hard, or a revolver whose oddity let it secretly chamber a bullet during an opponent's turn in a game of Russian roulette. On paper, that sounded useful, but in practice, it required too many conditions, too many people willing to actually point a gun at themselves. It would, however, delight Aha. In short, those were Bai Luan's gains from his vacation. With them, his combat capability rose significantly. His default approach was the bolter and chainsword. Against tough opponents, he'd add the cyber mask and enter a second, colder stage of combat. If that still didn't work, he'd pull on armor. If that failed, he'd plead to the god Aha, who, of course, would likely ignore him. Failing all else, he'd use the anywhere door to escape and call Heita for backup. No one had more contingency layers than he did. When his vacation ended and the time stream's effects faded, Bai Luan prepared to take over the Heita space station. He boarded the ship carrying over 1,000 mostly useless oddities and considered the challenges ahead. Internally, the station could be a mess: infighting, ostracism, a toxic workplace, runaway oddities, or contained creatures loose in the halls. Externally, he would need to watch for thieves, hostile factions, and opportunists. The idle, leisurely work mode he'd enjoyed in his previous life might be impossible now. The station had matured for 9 centuries and no longer needed the same hands-on tinkering that had once made it a playground for his talents. It would be a long and arduous transition. He treated the takeover like a trial. That mindset was blown apart 3 days after he landed. Everyone on the station treated him with an almost reverent deference, more respect than they showed even to the old veterans who had been there for 900 years. Bai Luan was baffled. Where did this prestige come from for a newly appointed station master? He wandered up to a staff member and asked for an explanation. The employee hesitated noticeably, like someone wanting to say something but too intimidated to do so. His face read, "I want to speak, but I don't know if I should." Bai Luan waved it off and said, "It's fine. Say whatever you want." Given permission, the staff member immediately burst out, "No, who would dare question you?" 38. 11 out of 10. What exactly had this station master done? He had designed the Heita space station in a month, personally taken part in its construction, witnessed its launch, and after liftoff laid down the preliminary framework for the station's systems. A system conceived over 900 years ago was still in use. What did that even mean? Maybe he had foreseen the present situation back when the station was first built. Even without that, his resume read like legend. He casually taught the station's staff a lesson that benefited them for life. Stark and Conrad themselves, authorities in their fields, openly admitted as much. He'd even sacrificed himself and disappeared to seal a stellaron. Every researcher who came to Heita met 2 names, Miss Heita and Bai Luan. Imagine a historical figure from a textbook suddenly coming to life and working beside you. Of course, not everyone accepted that at face value. It sounded too incredible. Doubts persisted until Shu arrived on the station. A mechanical creation comparable to a sentient being, it nearly floored the station's relevant specialists. They treated Shu like a masterpiece. Others didn't grasp the marvel, but seeing those experts' reactions, they felt awed too. Expectations for the station master were already sky high after Shu's debut, but Bai Luan's entrance was grander still. Over 1,000 oddities, at one a day without repeats, it would take years to see them all. What more could anyone say? His title as station master was earned. Who would dare question him? For 10 minutes, a researcher extolled him, and Bai Luan stood there, scalp tingling with awkwardness, gritting his teeth and listening. From the station's perspective, his prestige was immense, second only to Heita herself. Bai Luan didn't particularly care about the accolades. To him, these people were the kind who'd declare, "I pick Lu Xiaobu, he's everyone's choice." What was wrong with that? People were happy. And practically speaking, if he wanted to upgrade the station's armaments now, no one would protest. Of course, he paid for it himself. It was a fine station master tradition to fund the station's upgrades, and he intended to keep it. Bai Luan spent a large sum buying weaponry, upgrading the Defense Department's equipment to the most advanced available. The personnel were ecstatic. After a long period of cultural focus and military neglect, they'd had no upgrades in ages. Bai Luan's armaments were like rain after a drought. The Defense Department cheered. He compiled a trove of Antimatter Legion data and distributed it as common knowledge to every researcher, ordering them to study it. No one dared question his edict. By then, people assumed the station master had a far-reaching plan. Some groups even guessed this would be a key future research direction and opened topics about dealing with the Antimatter Legion. The derivation process might be messy, but the result was right. Bai Luan also placed emergency first aid kits throughout the station to improve survival odds during an Antimatter Legion attack. He didn't know when the Legion might strike, so he couldn't stop it, only prepare to reduce casualties. Above all, his greatest contribution was simply being there. His presence on Heita was the most reassuring thing. Perhaps he might even meet the Stellaron hunters. He wondered whether he had a part in Elio's script, whether Elio knew him. In a way, by adopting Elio's identity, he'd conned his way into the happiest 3 years of his life. It was, he thought, bittersweet. After arming the station, Bai Luan had finished the essential tasks. Even if the Antimatter Legion attacked tomorrow, losses would be limited. The later the attack came, the more the station would learn about them and the fewer casualties they could inflict. With his responsibilities fulfilled, he could turn to things that interested him. For example, a mobile vehicle for Inspiration Shroom. He couldn't keep carrying a flower pot every time the little creature went out, and without protection, Inspiration Shroom could be easily hurt. Bai Luan designed a mount modeled on the classic UFO disc spacecraft, a silver-white streamlined shell, built-in thermostatic and humidistat life support, and even a miniature energy shield. Essentially a life pod, it could be freely controlled by Inspiration Shroom. With it, the mascot could move around the station at will. Soon, a floating mascot was everywhere on Heita. Inspiration Shroom and Chihiro could be seen flitting from lab to corridor. When the shroom flew, it made its own background sound. Goo, 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 a rhythmic radar-like chirp. Surrounded by the station's many oddities, Inspiration Shroom didn't seem out of place. Polite, pleasant-voiced, and endlessly curious, it was quickly embraced by the researchers. Next, Bai Luan worked on giving Heita in the little black room a proper body. Heita's consciousness was becoming more like the original Heita's, and he wanted to give her a body she could use at will. The project was mainly done inside the little black room, and didn't take long overall. Bai Luan crafted the head, hands, feet, and legs. Heita herself fashioned the more private parts during the room's procedures. Because the little black room required his presence while operating, he couldn't leave during that stage. He had to stand there facing the void, unnervingly aware of an intense gaze on his back, convinced that a single glance over his shoulder would bring down a hammer on him. He couldn't move. Fortunately, it was all over now. Inside the little black room, Bai Luan watched Heita's consciousness transfer into the new body and nodded. From the outside, it was indistinguishable from the real Heita. The new Heita stretched elegantly, then her gaze fell on the original Heita body beside her, temporarily unconscious and delicate as a puppet. With a curious step, she reached out and with mischievous playfulness, pinched her own unresponsive cheek. The touch made her eyes narrow in satisfaction. She murmured, as if evaluating a fine work of art. Even an unmoving me is 11 out of 10. How does it feel? Bai Luan asked from the side. Heita turned to him, then walked over with light, precise steps. Her deep purple eyes scanned him with the interested amusement of someone inspecting a new toy. Bai Luan shrank back a little under that gaze. What? are you doing?" he managed. Her lips curved into that familiar, slightly smug smile. "Quite good." She reached out, measured the distance between his head and her own, and announced with satisfaction, "At least, this genius doesn't have to look up at you anymore." 39. Surprise. The Pigeon King has fallen. Asta hadn't come to be the station master of Heita Space Station, so there was still some time before the station might be attacked. Since Heita had already taken care of almost everything, life had settled back into its quiet routine. Heita Space Station had matured over the centuries. Even if Bai Luan did nothing, the station would keep running. When Heita appointed a Heita puppet as station master, that puppet mostly didn't interfere. The real work was handled by the various departments. Bai Luan's complete idleness, however, bored him. He still liked to teach the station's people from time to time. His knowledge wasn't comparable to true prodigies, but it was more than enough to help these residents. Because of what he'd set in motion 900 years ago, everyone on the station had a clear sense of their place now. There were many talented people, talents who looked like geniuses to those without abilities. But next to genuine geniuses, they were insignificant. Compared to how Heita Space Station had been back in the game, Bai Luan remembered, the atmosphere after his guidance was much healthier. At least most people knew their roles. Internal rivalries still occurred. People liked to compare themselves, but Bai Luan was already thinking about how to steer that into positive competition. Before he could settle on a plan, Heita summoned him. Bai Luan was semi-permanently based at the station. Heita didn't need to call him back often, and when she did, he had a habit of slacking off first, then slipping away through a random door when the time was right. The tasks Heita assigned had been getting harder and harder. The casual title, Heita's assistant, had quietly become appropriate. She kept giving him assignments that sat right at the edge of his ability, the kind that would be impossible with even the tiniest bit more difficulty. At first, Bai Luan thought Heita was testing him and that his repeated success was luck. After enough repetitions, he began to suspect she'd seen through his limits and was training him on purpose. He finally decided to ask the Heita in the little black room because only she truly knew her own mind. Her answer was simple. She hadn't seen through him. She'd just been piling on troublesome tasks and watching to find his upper bound. It wasn't that she always correctly gauged his limit beforehand. Rather, she kept placing him at challenges that happened to be at his edge. Each time, Bai Luan used the little black room to lift himself high enough to finish the job. Bai Luan had never realized he was constantly breaking through previous limits. He always thought, "Oh, so this is my limit." When Heita told him otherwise, he was skeptical at first. But she was blunt. She wouldn't lie about something like that. Maybe it was simply habit. Because he'd been living that cycle of learning and advancing for so long, progress felt normal. Either way, he accepted it. His talent wasn't exceptional. He was immortal. The gap between him and a genius had to be closed with endless hours of work. All the hardship and sweat happened in the little black room. To outsiders, he merely appeared suddenly capable. It helped that Heita and the system saw that effort. Knowing someone else watched made the loneliness easier to bear. If one day he could stand shoulder to shoulder with Heita, how cool would that be? He could keep taking his time. A year or half-year in the little black room passed in the blink of the outside world anyway. From Heita's perspective, the work Bai Luan did for her was quick and effective. It was slower than if she handled it personally, but not by much, which was astonishing. Even if the universe were scraped clean for talent, few people would match him. Not for lack of skill elsewhere, but because no one with his abilities would be willing to humble themselves and serve as an assistant. Heita also found Bai Luan's behavior oddly entertaining. No matter the task, his face when she told him the assignment always read like someone about to collapse. "Oh my God, this is so hard. How am I supposed to do this? This is pure torment." Yet when he actually worked, he had a kind of effortless precision, speed-running through tasks with almost no mistakes and delivering perfect results. After finishing, he would look exhausted. 3 different expressions for one job, all genuine. Heita didn't bother to probe why he behaved that way. She took the pleasure of watching him flounder, the efficiency of his completion, plus the fact that he cooked good food. She'd spent centuries pulling him out of a chaotic time stream. She might as well get her money's worth. In time, they settled into a unique relationship. Heita gained an indispensable assistant who brought emotional value, culinary skill, and practical success. Bai Luan got one of the most powerful supports in the universe and a comfortable life. That suited them both. After finishing Heita's last assignment, Bai Luan didn't rush to report. His random doors still had cooldown, and he indulged in a little more slacking. He spent the time lying in his room, strolling through the botanical garden, or cooking something delicious for himself. He also chatted with the refrigerator AI, a proudly contrarian device that called him nagging if he brought up certain topics, but sulked if he didn't. Bai Luan liked teasing it. He told the AI that Shu would come back after achieving something in his studies, and that Shu might even cook for the refrigerator. Heh, as long as it doesn't stuff me with random things again, the refrigerator AI grumbled, but Bai Luan was sure it secretly looked forward to the moment. He also kept the 3 online accounts, gaming, music, and daily life, ticking over. When those accounts suddenly became active again, the cosmic internet blew up, especially after the official platform verified the owner's return. People realized the account owner was no ordinary person. He'd lived for over 900 years. The gaming channel didn't get huge traction. Creating content and localization was a pain, but the music and daily life feeds got intense responses. Every update filled the screen with comments like, "Once in a lifetime," "Witness history," "Great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, he finally updated," "Zombie King unearthed," "The Pigeon King has fallen." Memes and over-the-top reactions became a hallmark of those streams. Bai Luan enjoyed scrolling through the replies. The music account stuck to high-quality output. The daily life one was beginning to run out of obvious ideas. He planned a real-person appearance when he boarded a train and some abstract collaborations with the stellar Jade Sprite. Maybe he could work with Ginefin when he went to Xianzhou. The thought made him smile. When the random doors cooldown finally ended, Bai Luan went to report to Heita. She skimmed his report as usual, found no problems, and nodded. "Then I'll return to Heita's space station." "Wait, there's something else," Bai Luan said. "Someone small will be reporting to the station soon. Arrange her posting. Her name is Asta." "Asta," Heita repeated. A flash of recognition crossed Bai Luan's face. "That should spare you from listening to those long, boring family reports from the company." "Oh." Heita's gaze swept him like a probe. "Is this the interesting thing you mentioned before?" "Yes," Bai Luan smiled, confident. "Give me some time. You'll see her true value." "You pledging that is rare." Heita's interest flickered. "Perfect timing. I'm going to the station anyway. I'll drop by and see the results." "You're coming to the station?" Bai Luan was slightly surprised. "Is it about a new project?" "Remember the last time I went to see that machine head?" she asked. "It's still fresh in my memory. I wasn't satisfied with that meeting. I already conceived a plan. I'm preparing to put it into action." She paused, looking directly at him. "Simulated universe." "You mean a simulated universe?" Bai Luan echoed. "Yes, the project team is small right now. You should join." Bai Luan hesitated. The other members were all from the Genius Society. Would they isolate him? "I don't think that's a good idea," he said. "What? You don't want me to invite you?" Heita arched an eyebrow. "No, I just don't think I'm qualified." "Not qualified?" She considered him for a moment. "We'll talk about this later. I'll be going then." Bai Luan turned to leave. Heita watched him go, and the name simulated universe lingered in her mind. Bai Luan had blurted that phrase the first time they'd met. How far into the future had he glimpsed? A prophet peering at the threads of fate? Heh. Things were getting more interesting. Whether he was qualified or not, she'd let the other members of the Simulated Universe project decide. She had a feeling the outcome would be worth watching. Chapter 40. There will always be one that belongs to you. The story hadn't even properly begun. The Asta Bai Luan had met was still an earlier, undeveloped version. Watching the slightly naive girl in front of him, he already began thinking about how to train her into a competent station member. Asta hadn't brought much with her this time. A few household essentials, and Peppy and Arlen. Her most important piece of equipment was that practically unlimitable credit card. These two people and one dog, all newcomers, would need time to adapt. Bai Luan immediately noticed differences from his memories. They didn't even have their signature weapons yet. How could he tolerate that? Not for a second. He'd fix it right away. Even if their mastery levels weren't maxed, their appearance at least should be. He mentally ran through arrangements for them, then offered a calm, reassuring smile to the nervous arrivals. Don't be nervous. Relax. I'll give you a tour of Heita Space Station. You'll be living here from now on. Arlen stayed wary, standing close to Asta, eyes scanning everything with the cautious vigilance of a bodyguard. If he hadn't been holding Peppy in one arm and a suitcase in the other, he would have looked even more imposing. Asta, polite and formal, returned Bai Luan's greeting, but remained tense. Although Miss Heita had personally requested her presence, Asta knew that request had been more of a courtesy than anything else. She hadn't expected the station master to greet her in person. Before arriving, she'd researched thoroughly, and in her mind, the man before her was legendary, someone close enough to Miss Heita to be an example to follow. It wasn't just about him being great, it was about being able to be near Heita herself. That idea made Asta nervous and a little awed. Arlen's tension, by contrast, came from entering a new place, not from the man beside him. Easy fix, give him weapons. Asta's anxiety would take a little longer. I already told you, don't be so tense. I'm not one of those annoying, low-EQ old fogies in your family. Do I look very old? No. If anything, you look too young. You don't seem much older than me. It's not just how I look. I'm not much older than you. Don't believe the rumors that I'm hundreds of years old. They're exaggerated. Asta cocked her head, curious. Then the story about sealing the stellarons and disappearing, was that false? Oh, that part is actually true. Huh? Asta blinked. That was the most absurd-sounding part, and yet it was true. People say I'm centuries old only because I trapped in a temporal anomaly, Bai Luan went on, deadpan. Hundreds of years passed outside, but I felt only a few minutes. He added with a straight face, theoretically, I'm a 20-something from over 900 years ago. The earnest delivery of such a ridiculous line made Asta giggle before she could stop herself. She covered her mouth, cheeks flushed. I'm sorry, it's just those two sentences together sound so odd. Bai Luan waved it off. It's fine, I'd laugh too, relax. Bai Luan was the best tour guide on Heita Space Station. No one knew the place better. As they walked, he wove short stories into the tour. Tales about the headaches of building certain facilities, sharp little jabs at the klutzy operations of the old pioneers. Those ancients could never have imagined that 900 years later, their embarrassments would be retold by the station master as cautionary examples. The haters, it seemed, had remarkable endurance. Through the stories, Asta slowly absorbed the layout and functions of Heita Space Station, the names of sections, what each facility did, the roles of different departments. She began to relax. Her focus shifted from Bai Luan's identity to the station itself, its collection of strange curios, the constant conversations about science, the view of the starfield that took your breath away, the whimsical inspiration shrooms hitching rides on little UFOs. Asta had been on the station less than a day, yet she already felt more at home here than in her real home. It wasn't her house, yet she didn't feel out of place. She had traveled far, but felt as if she were finally coming home. She found herself drawn to a huge observation window and pressed a cool hand to the glass. Outside, an infinite, swirling galaxy. The starry sky she had stared at for years, now she was within it. It was wonderful. She would live here. In her chest, a small seed of freedom unfurled. Memories of family rules, cold glances, and meaningless social rituals rose like a tide, and then, with fierce relief, she pushed them away. You can't control me anymore. May the rest of my life have little to do with you. May we all be well and leave each other in peace. The stars are beautiful, aren't they? Bai Luan's voice came from behind, bringing her back. He, too, was gazing out at the expanse. If you search patiently, he said quietly, there will always be one that belongs to you. Asta's breath caught. A warm current, tinged with something bittersweet, slipped through her defenses. Her family had always mocked her love of the stars. What use were they? They'd said, they don't pay credits. But liking something doesn't need justification. The first time she looked up at the world's sky, she'd known she would be captivated for life. She wanted a star that would be hers. One undiscovered, hiding playfully in the firmament for years, avoiding other astronomers' gaze, just so it could meet her on an unplanned night. That dream had always been misunderstood. No one at home saw the romance in it. They only saw expense and impracticality. Now, unexpectedly, here was someone who seemed to understand. "Thank you, station master," Asta said softly. "I'll work hard to find that star that belongs to me, as long as I can stay on this station." She reached toward the twinkling lights, as if she could touch them. "I will find it." Arlen stood by her, and for the first time in a very long while, a genuine smile appeared on his face. The young lady hadn't smiled so purely and relaxedly in years. Herta Space Station should be a place where people research and chase their ideals. As station master, Bai Luan smiled at both of them and made it official. "Asta, Arlen, Peppy, welcome. You are now official members of Herta Space Station." "Woof," Peppy barked from Arlen's arms, looking at Bai Luan as if to ask, "Do I get an allotment too?" Bai Luan laughed. "I am a master of impartiality. I treat everyone equally."